Hello everyone. I hope all of you are in good health and doing absolutely fine. Aspirants, through this session and the next one, my aim is to connect to all those aspirants who are thinking of geography as their choice of optional for the civil services mains examination. It means I am trying to connect to all those people who are thinking of opting for geography as their optional in the civil services mains examination. Now, if you look at the history of this examination since the time of its inception, and if you pick one optional which has not lost its popularity even for a single year, it has to be geography. Geography is extremely popular among aspirants, and especially after 2013 when the syllabus of mains examination was revised, and even in 2011 when CSAT was introduced. Civil services examination attracted a lot of students from science background, and when they came into this competition, geography emerged for them as a natural choice, because though this is a social science subject, it borrows heavily from the natural sciences. So all those students जो engineers थे, जिन्होंने BSc किया हुआ था, they all opted for geography. But a kind of, you can say, similarity with the graduation can be one of the motivating factors to choose an optional, but it cannot be the sole factor for the choice of your optional. There has to be other factors as well. So what are the factors and what should we keep in our mind while choosing our optional subject? I'll try to discuss that first in this session. Then I will try to analyze that how geography fits into the framework of a good choice. Then we will decode the syllabus of geography. In this session, I will decode the syllabus of physical geography, whereas in the next session, I will decode the syllabus of human geography. Physical geography and human geography are two sections of geography. Although if you look at the syllabus of UPSC has divided your syllabus into two parts, paper 1 and paper 2, and both the papers have a combination of physical and human geography. But it makes more sense to understand the syllabus from the physical geography viewpoint and from the human geography viewpoint if we are trying to draw a dichotomy. So in this session, my aim would be to decode the physical geography syllabus. I will also tell you that which are the sources that you should follow for preparing the physical geography section for both paper 1 and paper 2. Whereas in the next class, I will talk about human geography sections of paper 1 and paper 2, which sources you should follow. And then we will try to take one sample topic from physical geography in this session, and in the next session from human geography to get the taste of the subject. And finally, we will see the previous year's question papers, the last 2 years' question papers, to have a feel about the examination or the pattern of the examination. So in this lecture or in this session, it would be 50% of geography, how to prepare geography, whereas in the next session, it would be the rest 50%. Both these sessions together will give you a good idea about how to prepare for geography. But before we move into that direction, it becomes very important for us that why optional is so important in this examination and what factors should we keep in mind while choosing our optional and how geography is a good choice. So let me begin with the question of why optional is so important in this examination. See, the examination is divided into two stages. The first one is the civil services preliminary stage. The civil services preliminary stage is only the screening test. Here, selection is done only for the purposes of mains examination. The final merit list is not prepared on the basis of marks that somebody obtains in the civil services preliminary examination. That's the first stage of your examination. The second stage of your examination is the civil services main examination. It is divided into two sub-stages. One is the civil services main examination written part and the personality test, which aspirants often call as the interviews. Now, it is the marks that you obtain in the civil services main examination, it means the written examination and the interviews, that enable you to qualify for the services. So this stage is just conducted to separate the serious aspirants from the non-serious ones, or to separate the best from the rest. But this stage is actually the game changer, or the civil services main examination is the game changer. Why? Because the marks that you obtain in your written examination enable you to qualify for your personality test, and on the basis of your marks that you have obtained in your civil services main examination and the interviews, your final list is prepared. And on the basis of that list, UPSC recommends aspirants for the civil services examination, or for the services rather. Now, if you look at the civil services mains written stage, it can be broken down into two basic areas. One is the GS area, the other one is optional. Apart from GS and optional, there is a compulsory Indian language paper, but like preliminary examination, this is just a qualifying paper. The marks that you obtained in your compulsory Indian language paper is not added for your final merit list. Similarly, there is an English paper, and like the Indian language paper, it means it includes all the languages that are included in the 8th schedule of the Constitution, like Hindi, Bengali, Punjabi, everything. You have to choose one of those languages and you have to just obtain qualifying marks in there. And similarly, there is a compulsory English paper. Again, this is a qualifying paper. You have to just get qualification marks. But your marks that you obtain in your GS papers, which has 4 parts, GS 1, 2, 3 and 4, plus what you get in your optional paper, which is divided into 2 parts, optional paper 1 and paper 2, plus the marks that you get in your essay paper, determines your merit. And on the basis of the marks that you have got in GS optional and essay, you get a call for the UPSC interviews. तो अब GS ऑप्शनल और essay के बेसिस पे आपका सिलेक्शन होता है इंटरव्यू के लिए, और इनमें जो मार्क्स मिलते हैं वो मार्क्स फाइनली भी ऐड होते हैं जो आपकी सिलेक्शन लिस्ट बनती है, फाइनल सिलेक्शन लिस्ट. If you look at the GS papers, GS 1, 2, 3, they get more or less average marks. It means if you see the person who has got first rank and if you see the person who has got 100th rank or 200th rank, you will not see a great difference in their marks as far as GS paper 1, 2 or 3 is concerned. There is some sort of difference in GS paper 4, which is the ethics paper. Some people score handsomely well in ethics vis-a-vis other students. So as far as the divergence of marks is concerned, ethics shows some divergence of marks, whereas in GS paper 1, 2 and 3 there is a lot of convergence. It means the distinction is not so great. But if you look at the optionals, you will see a difference of 100 to even 150 marks between those who have scored excellently well and have got the IAS, the IPS and the IRS, and those who have missed the interview call or who have not got good marks or good ranks. So optional is the game changer. It is the marks that you obtain in your optional paper along with your GS paper 4 and the essay paper that determines that whether you would get the IAS, the IPS, the IRS, the IFS. It means the top ranks in the examination. तो आपकी रैंक कैसी होगी ये डिपेंड करता है आपके ऑप्शनल पे. तो अगर आपने अपने ऑप्शनल को अच्छे से चूज नहीं किया, इट मीन्स you have not invested enough thought and time in choosing your optional, then your bad decision with respect to your choice of optional can cost you an attempt or in fact the entire selection if you persist with that bad choice. So what are the factors that we should keep in mind while choosing our optional? You see, I believe that there are three things that you need to keep in mind. The first thing is the relevance of your optional with other subjects of your examination, because you see that this is a very tough examination. You are competing with the best minds of the country. कोई IIT से है, कोई IIM से है, तरह तरह जगह से लोग हैं. But this examination, the best thing about it is it creates a level playing field for all. इससे फर्क नहीं पड़ता आप कहाँ से आ रहे हैं. अगर आपने अच्छी strategy apply की है, then you will surely get selected. If you don't believe me, just look at the results of the past 5 years and check that those who have got high ranks, how many of them come from premier education institutions in India. You'll see many of them come from institutions which are not so much sought after, but yet they have done excellently well in the UPSC Civil Services Examination. And a lot of credit for their success goes to their choice of optional. If the optional has not been chosen in a strategic fashion and by keeping the interests of the aspirant in mind, it means आपने रीजन और रैशनल माइंड से नहीं चूज किया है, बट इमोशन में आके हो सकता है किसी ने कह दिया तो आपने चूज कर लिया कोई ऑप्शनल. इफ दैट इज द केस, देन इट कैन कॉस्ट यू योर सिलेक्शन. सो द फर्स्ट थिंग दैट द ऑप्शनल शुड हैव इज हाउ मच इज द ऑप्शनल relevant with respect to other parts of your examination. It means, say, the GS section and the essay section. This is one way of checking relevance. Another way of checking relevance is whether your optional helps you in your civil services preliminary examination or not. Because if you look at the civil services preliminary examination, which contains two parts, one is the GS part and the other one is the civil services aptitude test. It is based on your logic, aptitude, reasoning and all of that. This GS paper is a combination of subjects from social science and general science along with current affairs. So you need to check that when you pick an optional, whether it is of any use in the civil services preliminary examination or not. क्योंकि आप तो अपना burden कम करना चाहोगे. आपने कोई ऐसा ऑप्शनल चूज कर लिया जिसका कोई रेलेवेंसी नहीं है प्री में, तो आपने तो अपना एफर्ट और बढ़ा लिया. Unless you have extraordinary background already with respect to that subject, I would suggest you should refrain from such choices which increases your burden as an aspirant. So you have to make your choices very intelligently. तो रेलेवेंस हम दो तरह से देखेंगे. एक तो हम देखेंगे कि ये जीएस और एसए में कितना मदद करता है, और दूसरा हम देखेंगे कि सिविल सर्विसेज प्रिलिमिनरी एग्जामिनेशन में ज्योग्राफी कैसे मदद कर सकता है. द सेकेंड फैक्टर दैट यू शुड कीप इन योर माइंड while choosing optional is the resource. Now, resource generally refers to the books, the materials, the magazines, the newspapers, etc. It means the material on the basis of which you will take forward your preparation. Resources often include, say, a mentor who would guide you so that you move in the right direction. Because if you move in a wrong direction, you can go away from your goal. Like, say, for example, this is your goal and this is you, and you need to move in the right direction to reach your goal. But if you start moving in the wrong direction, with the passage of time, you can be far from your goal. And the role of a mentor or a teacher or a guide is to ensure that you keep walking on the right path, so that your energies, your efforts, they are all directed towards getting to your goal. Clear? Resources also means material, which includes books, magazines, newspapers, reports, etc. And you should choose your optional by keeping in mind that the optional is such that there is no dearth of resources. मतलब रिसोर्स की कमी नहीं है, क्योंकि आपको इंटरेस्ट तो बड़ा है, आपने ले भी लिया है, रेलेवेंट भी है आपका ऑप्शनल. बट अगर आपके ऑप्शनल के लिए रिसोर्सेस नहीं है, then again you will struggle with respect to the preparation of the optional. The third thing that you need to keep in your mind, and perhaps the biggest motivating factor for many people, it is the result. आखिरकार ये सब कुछ हो तो रहा है सिलेक्शन के लिए, तो अगर आपके ऑप्शनल से सिलेक्शन ही नहीं हो रहे हैं और the percentage of selection is very bad, then definitely you should think one more time before choosing your optional. Result is the final output. Though this is what the world sees, this is just the tip of the iceberg. उसके नीचे बहुत सारे preparation होता है, dedication होता है, hard work होता है. And let me tell you, friends, that if you want to become an IS officer, an IPS officer, an IRS officer, IFS officer, or any other central services officer, there is no substitution to hard work. You have to work extremely hard to achieve that dream. There are no shortcuts in this examination. But ऐसा बहुत सारे लोगों के साथ होता है कि जो बहुत हार्ड वर्क करते हैं, they study, say, more than what others are doing. There is focus also in their preparation. But क्योंकि उन्होंने अपना ऑप्शनल सही तरीके से नहीं सिलेक्ट किया था, they struggle in the examination. And the results from their optional are not so good. So these are the three factors that you should keep in mind while choosing an optional for your civil services main examination. I call it the 3R framework: the relevance, the resources, and the results that your optional is giving. These three things should be kept in mind while choosing your optional. So let us see that how geography fits in very well into this 3R framework, और कैसे इस 3R फ्रेमवर्क में हम ये समझ सकते हैं कि ज्योग्राफी एक अच्छा चॉइस है, तभी तो ये इतना पॉपुलर है. आप किसी भी साल देख लीजिए, the number of people opting for geography is constantly increasing. People opt for geography both from the natural science as well as the social science background, and that makes geography the evergreen optional. If there is one optional which can be called as the king of optionals, it has to be geography. And why? Because of its very well codified syllabus, relevant syllabus, good availability of resources, and the results that geography is producing. So let me first check that how relevant is geography. First, I'll check the relevance of geography with respect to GS and essay. क्योंकि आपको पता है कि कंपटीशन इतना स्ट्रॉन्ग है कि आपको अपने बर्डन को कम करना चाहिए, जिससे कि आपके पास जो टास्क है उसको आप बहुत अच्छे से कर सको. क्लियर? So if you look at GS paper 1, which is made out of world history, Indian history, art and culture, society and geography. This is a 250 mark paper or 250 marks paper. Out of this 250, 100 marks come directly from geography. Sometimes it can be 80 to 100. So you can understand that there is a good relevance of geography in your GS paper 1. In your GS paper 1, nearly 80 to 100 marks out of your 250 marks are asked directly from geography. अब सोचो, जिसका ऑप्शनल ज्योग्राफी है उसको ये एक्स्ट्रा मेहनत करने की जरूरत नहीं है. अगर आपका ऑप्शनल XYZ कोई भी ऑप्शनल है जो ज्योग्राफी नहीं है, then you have to put this extra effort in your GS paper 1 to learn geography. Clear? So GS paper 1, as far as GS paper 1 is concerned, 1/3 weightage of that paper is geography, pure geography. So that's why geography is extremely relevant for your GS paper 1. तो ये तो बिल्कुल डायरेक्ट केस हो गया. Let me take GS paper 2. GS paper 2 is polity and constitution of India, governance and social justice plus international relations. International relations is the relations between different countries. और अगर आप कोई भी international relation देखोगे तो उसमें आपको एक एंगल जरूर दिखेगा, and that is the geopolitical angle. It means international politics which is drawn from the geography of the countries or the location of the countries. आप सुन रहे होगे अभी that India and China, there is a tussle going on between these two countries. और ये सारा tussle अगर आप देखोगे, so it is where? It is around the LAC. LAC को आप एक मैप पे ही तो पढ़ोगे, and you know that the science of maps is actually geography, cartography, which is a branch of geography. So what I'm trying to say is, be it Ladakh issue or be it the Indo-Pacific region, which is very much in news nowadays. Think of the South China Sea. या आपने हाल ही में देखा होगा that Azerbaijan and Armenia, they are fighting over a geographical region called Nagorno-Karabakh. So when you talk about international relations, and which carries nearly 50 to 60 marks out of the 250 marks in your GS paper 2, you will see that geography becomes indispensable. It becomes naturally helping as an optional while writing international relations. जिनका geography नहीं है वो सिर्फ international relations के बारे में जो जानते हैं वो लिख देंगे, लेकिन जिनका geography है वो एक मैप बना सकते हैं, वो geographical characteristics को भी highlight कर सकते हैं, and this naturally attracts the interest of the evaluator and you end up getting good marks. चलो आ जाते हैं GS paper 3 पर. GS paper 3 is economic and social development, environment, science and tech, internal security and disaster management. तो एक एक सेक्शन को देख लेते हैं. When you talk about economic and social development, and social development, which is, or socio-economic development, is development of people in the light of their social relations and economic occupations. और economic occupations क्या हैं? तीन ही हैं. प्राइमरी ऑक्यूपेशन, सेकेंडरी एंड टर्शरी, या एग्रीकल्चर, इंडस्ट्री, ट्रेड एंड सर्विसेज। अगर आप एग्रीकल्चर के बारे में पढ़ रहे हो एंड यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट से क्रॉप कॉम्बिनेशन रीजन्स, then you have to come within the ambit of geography, क्योंकि आपको पता है what kind of agriculture will be present in a particular region depends upon what is the climate of the region, how is the soil of the region, what is the water availability of the region, and these are all geographical factors. And if you have a sound base in geography, it naturally helps you to understand the agricultural economy of the region. Similarly, if you're talking about industries, for example, you're learning about iron and steel industries, and you know that the steel industry is based on a mineral called iron ore, and when you study things about resources, natural resources of the earth, or minerals of the earth, or even energy resources of the earth, you are in the realm of geography. And economic and social development also helps you, or geography also helps you rather, in economic and social development with respect to your trade and transport. Because what kind of trade would happen in a particular region depends upon what is the geography of the region. Because the geography supports the industry and the industry determines the trade. और अगर आप कोई एक ट्रेड पैटर्न भी इवॉल्व कर रहे हो, then you do it over a map, and you know that maps are subject matter of geography. Clear? So in that sense, in economic and social development, geography is extremely helpful. Economic and social development consists nearly 100 marks in your 250 marks of GS paper 3. GS paper 3 में एक section ही है agriculture, and you understand that without geographical knowledge, you cannot understand agriculture. Things like crop combinations, crop regions, climatic or agroclimatic regions, they are impossible to understand without having a sound knowledge in geography. So in that case, agriculture, which consists of nearly 50 marks, has a direct overlap with your geography optional. Then there is environment. And environment, in fact, or the study of environment is in fact a sub-part of geography. Geography is generally divided into two parts: the study of physical features and the study of man-made features. The study of man-made features or the man-made environment is your human geography, whereas the study of natural features is physical geography. And natural features means what? Natural features means land, air, water, plants and animals, or flora or fauna. When you study land, it becomes lithosphere. When you study air, it becomes atmosphere. When you study water, it is hydrosphere. And when you study about the plants and animals, it is your environmental geography. And to understand environmental geography, you must have a sound knowledge about lithosphere, atmosphere and hydrosphere. So the entire environmental section again comes out of your optional. अगर आप GS ऑप्शनल ज्योग्राफी का पेपर 1 देखेंगे, उसका फर्स्ट पार्ट देखेंगे, उसका 5th यूनिट देखेंगे, विच इज एनवायरमेंटल ज्योग्राफी, वो यूनिट अपने आप में GS3 में जितना एनवायरमेंट है उसको एनकम्पैस कर लेता है, उससे बाहर कुछ है ही नहीं. It also has conventions and all those kind of things, the current affairs features, and they are asked in your optional as well. So in GS paper 3 also, geography has a lot of weightage. When you talk about disaster management, internal security and disaster management means, what is a disaster? Disasters can be flood, they can be cyclones, और अगर मैं flood, cyclone या famine, drought इनकी बातें कर रहा हूँ, then I am definitely touching the aspects of geography. So from that point too, geography becomes extremely important. तो इकोनॉमिक एंड सोशल डेवलपमेंट में रेलेवेंस है, एग्रीकल्चर में है, एनवायरनमेंट में है, डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट में है। तो 4 सेक्शन जीएस पेपर 3 के डायरेक्टली रिलेटेड हैं आपके ज्योग्राफी ऑप्शनल से। सो 1 में भी उसका यूज है ज्योग्राफी का, 2 में भी है यूज है इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस के लिए, 3 में तो सबसे ज्यादा यूज है। दो geography is directly asked as a part of paper 1, but if you ask me where geography is most relevant, I would say it is GS paper 3. When you talk about essay, you will find that UPSC gives choices with respect to subjects of essay in the essay paper, and some of the essays are often drawn from environment, like global warming issues, climate change issues, pollution issues, waste management issues. तो अगर ऐसा कोई ऐसे आता है उसमें आपके पास अगर geographical knowledge नहीं है, then it becomes very difficult for you to write an answer for such kind of essays. But अगर आपका optional geography है, then writing such kind of essays which belong to the environmental category becomes a plaything. It's almost like fun, क्योंकि आपने बहुत कुछ पढ़ रखा है उसके बारे में, बहुत सारा content तैयार है आपके पास. Only thing that you need to learn is the skill of essay writing or the art of essay writing. Whereas others have not only to learn the art of essay writing, but they have to learn the content of environment as well in order to present a good essay which is of the UPSC main standards. So every year you will see that there is 1 or 2 essay from the environmental section. और जिस टाइम की बातें हो रही हैं आज के समय की, you will see that a lot of people are now concerned about things like sustainable development and environmental conservation. So the relevance of environmental essays in your essay paper will only grow with time. तो इस तरीके से हमने देखा कि GS हो चाहे essay हो, geography has a lot of relevance in it. Let us check the relevance of geography with respect to the Civil Services Preliminary Examination. The Civil Services Preliminary Examination, the GS part, in this 100 questions are asked every year. They are objective type question, MCQs होते हैं. And if you will see that out of these 100 questions, nearly 25 to 30 questions are asked from geography plus environmental section. 2011, when the Civil Services Preliminary Examination pattern was revised, environment was introduced as a separate subject. उससे पहले भी था, but it was a part of your geography. But क्योंकि अब environment को अलग कर दिया गया है, and why this was done? Because the Indian Civil Services Examination or the UPSC Civil Services Examination and the Forest Services Examination, which is again conducted by UPSC, their first stage is now common. तो अगर फॉरेस्ट सर्विसेज वाले भी वही प्री का एग्जाम दे रहे हैं जो सिविल सर्विसेज वाले दे रहे हैं, देन सिविल सर्विसेज वालों को भी तैयार रहना चाहिए एनवायरनमेंट से रिलेटेड क्वेश्चंस के लिए. बिकॉज इन forest services, the focus will be around environment, conservation, sustainable development, plant protection, animal welfare, and all of that. And that's why in 2011, environment and ecology was introduced as a distinct subject for your civil services preliminary examination. 2011 से जितने भी प्री हुए हैं आज तक, अगर आप देखोगे, that geography and environment combinedly, including the current sections also, you will find 25 to 30 questions each year in the preliminary examination out of 100 questions. For the correct answer of every question, you get 2 marks in your civil services preliminary examination. So if there are 30 questions and if you can do them correctly, you get 60 marks. Just to give you an idea how much important are these marks is in 2019 Civil Services Preliminary Examination, the open cutoff was in the range of 98 to 100. So you can understand that अगर 98 कट ऑफ जा रहा है मेंस एग्जामिनेशन के लिए और उसमें से 60 सिर्फ ज्योग्राफी और एनवायरनमेंट से ही मिल सकते हैं अगर अच्छे से प्रिपेयर है तो, एंड विच इज अ पार्ट ऑफ योर ऑप्शनल, देन योर गेम इन द प्री बिकम्स वेरी इजी. आपको ये याद रखना चाहिए दैट सीसैट इज जस्ट अ क्वालिफाइंग पेपर. It is your marks that you obtain in your GS paper in the preliminary stage which ensures that whether you will write the civil services main written examination or not. और जो कट ऑफ आपकी क्रिएट होती है वो आपके GS के मार्क्स के बेसिस पे होती है. और कट ऑफ जो था 2019 में 98 के आसपास था, 98 to 100 इस रेंज में था. और अगर ये है कट ऑफ और अगर आपके 60 मार्क्स आउट ऑफ योर 98 comes directly from geography and environment, जिसके लिए आपने कुछ एक्स्ट्रा एफर्ट नहीं लगाया क्योंकि वो तो आपका ऑप्शनल ही था, then you can understand that the relevance of geography is very much for the civil services preliminary examination. तो मेंस एग्जामिनेशन में भी उसका रेलेवेंस है और प्रिलिमिनरी एग्जामिनेशन में भी उसका रेलेवेंस है. मेंस एग्जामिनेशन में रेलेवेंस विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू जीएस एंड एसए. दैट्स व्हाई ज्योग्राफी सक्सेसफुली passes the first test. जो हम ये 3 टेस्ट कर रहे हैं जो हमको ध्यान में रखना चाहिए when we select our optional. The first test is the relevance test and geography clears this with brilliant colors. Let us look at the second test, which is the resource test. Resource test, first let me talk about the material. अगर आप देखोगे geography में पिछले 25-30 साल से there are some standard books and these books form the core of your preparation. इसी बुक से आपके कॉन्सेप्ट्स भी तैयार हो जाएंगे बहुत आसानी से. It means there is no dearth of standard books which are very important for your preparation. अगर आप मैगजीन्स की बात करो तो 2 मैगजीन हैं, एक योजना, second Kurukshetra. Both these magazines, they are enough for your geography preparation. और अगर आपको चाहिए कुछ और पढ़ना तो there is a magazine called Geography and You. But I'll talk about the sources in a bit. But what I'm saying is there is availability of standard magazines. And these are very tiny magazines. bulky magazine नहीं है कि आपको बहुत सारा पढ़ना पड़ेगा. Tiny magazines coming from the Information and Broadcasting Ministry. It means the things that are written in these magazines can be directly used for your examination because they already support the view of the government. Or you can say that they are in tune with the demand of the examination. क्योंकि दूसरा कोई मैगजीन होगा अगर आप उसे पढ़ोगे तो हो सकता है जो लिख रहा हो वो अपने ओरिएंटेशन से उसका एक इंटरप्रिटेशन बना रहा होगा किसी भी इशू का. बट व्हेन यू टॉक अबाउट योजना और कुरुक्षेत्र, ये तो गवर्नमेंट से ही आ रहे हैं, तो इनसे अगर आप व्यूज लेके एग्जामिनेशन में लिखोगे एटलीस्ट दे विल नॉट बी डिस्कार्डेड इफ नॉट वेलकम्ड. इन फैक्ट they would be generally welcomed because that is the accepted view. Also, you come to know about the different schemes and the different programs that the government is using, and you can use those schemes and programs as part of your answer writing. Clear? So, as far as resources or material is concerned, geography is well blessed with materials. It means there is no dearth of material. ऐसा नहीं होता कि समझ लो आपको कोई बुक चाहिए और अगर आप जा रहे हो किसी भी लीडिंग स्टोर पे आपको वो बुक ना मिले, इसका मतलब रिसोर्स अवेलेबिलिटी बहुत अच्छी है ज्योग्राफी में. तो रेलेवेंस तो है, समझ लो रेलेवेंस है मेरे ऑप्शनल का, लेकिन रिसोर्सेस ही नहीं मिल रहे, देन हाउ वुड आई प्रिपेयर? सो व्हेन यू लुक एट ज्योग्राफी देयर इज नो डर्थ ऑफ रिसोर्सेस एंड देयर इज गुड नंबर ऑफ मेंटोर्स अवेलेबल in Delhi and elsewhere also who can guide you in preparing this optional. Now, mentoring can be an external phenomena. It can also be an internal phenomena. It means you can self-mentor yourself as well. But to do that, you can understand that you must see yourself from a different perspective, and it becomes challenging at times, and therefore it is generally advised to have a mentor. He can be anyone. He can be a member of your family, can be a friend, can be a teacher, can be anyone. Someone who guides you. And देखो, एक तो दो तरीके होते हैं सीखने के. एक तो आप गलतियां कर करके सीखो, और दूसरा दूसरों की गलतियों से सीख लो पहले. Now the mentor tells you what not to do because he or she has seen a large number of aspirants preparing under him or her. Whereas when you do your preparation on your own without any mentoring or without any guidance, you commit a lot of mistakes. और जितनी गलतियां आप करते हो उतने आपके attempts खराब होते रहते हैं. And you know that you have limited attempts or limited age limit for this examination. और फिर जैसे आपके attempts बढ़ते रहते हैं, आपका pressure भी बढ़ता रहता है. Anyhow, the mentors who are available in geography, they have good experience, and therefore guidance is also easily available with respect to geography. It means you can get a proper kind of mentoring or proper kind of you can say guidance with respect to geography. अब आ जाते हैं इस पे जो शायद सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग फैक्टर है कि ठीक है, मुझे समझ में आ गया that geography has a lot of relevance. मुझे ये भी समझ में आ गया that there is no resource crunch in geography. Resources are also, they are available in huge number. Mentors are also present who can guide me. Result. What about result? Is geography giving result? देखो, result आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है, ये चेक करने का सबसे अच्छा तरीका है ऑप्शनल की पॉपुलैरिटी को क्या हो रहा है. And if you see the curve of popularity of geography, it is continuously increasing. It means definitely geography is giving good number of results every year. That's why geography is considered as the evergreen optional. हर साल आपको in the top ranks you will find 2 to 3 people in the top 10 from geography. In fact, on an average I'm saying, in fact, in 2013, when the syllabus was amended, जब ये GS 1, 2, 3, 4 ऐसे इंट्रोड्यूस किए गए थे, ऐसे पेपर को और रेलेवेंट बनाया गया था, the topper of that year, AIR 1, is a student from geography. और कैसे हुआ ये? Because geography is so relevant. If the aspirants focus on their optional only, then they can do well in their GS as well as essay papers, and also in the civil services preliminary examination. ऐसा और कोई दूसरा ऑप्शनल नहीं है जिसका इतना रेलेवेंस है, जिसमें इतने रिसोर्सेस अवेलेबल हैं और जिसका रिजल्ट इतना कंसिस्टेंट है. The time that you require to prepare your entire geography optional is roughly 4 to 4.5 months. इस बीच में सारा प्रिपरेशन हो सकता है, और जब आप ये प्रिपेयर कर रहे हो तो आप ये भी सोचो कि उन ओवरलैपिंग सेक्शंस ऑफ जीएस, एसए या प्रिलिमिनरी एग्जामिनेशन की प्रिपरेशन भी कर रहे हो साथ साथ, जिसके लिए आपके साथ ही जो कॉम्पिटिटर्स हैं और योर फेलो कॉम्पिटिटर्स, they have to invest more energy because maybe their optional is not so relevant for the examination. So results भी आते हैं, resources भी बहुत सारे हैं और relevance भी बहुत है. So the 3R framework, अगर आप इसमें geography को set करोगे, then no other optional fits in best than geography. Geography becomes a natural choice then for aspirants. But this should not be the only factor for deciding whether you want to take geography or not. This is your logical interpretation of the examination. But अगर आपको अच्छा करना है, if you really want to get selected in this examination, then while you choose your optional, you should keep in mind that you are comfortable with the optional. अगर आपका कंफर्ट लेवल नहीं है ऑप्शनल के साथ, तो आप वो ऑप्शनल चूज नहीं कर पाओगे. बहुत सारे ऑप्शनल हैं जो पूरी तरीके से साइंस से रिलेटेड है. लाइक से फॉर एग्जाम्पल एन ऑप्शनल लाइक फिजिक्स और मैथमेटिक्स और जूलॉजी. अब अगर कोई सोशल साइंस बैकग्राउंड का है, वो तो सोच ही नहीं सकता इन सब के बारे में, because it would be an extra effort. And in the civil services mains examination, the standard of questions are very good, so you have to deeply study your optional. So social science वाले तो सोच ही नहीं पाते साइंस के सब्जेक्ट्स के बारे में, और जो साइंस के हैं और जिन्होंने साइंस लिया है, for them they are creating an extra burden for themselves, because not much of overlap exists between pure science subjects and the civil services main syllabus or the essay paper. Those subjects or those optionals which are from the humanities area or which are social sciences in nature. Let me take some optionals like say philosophy or psychology or public administration, etc. There is no incorporation of natural sciences in them. मतलब अगर कोई साइंस वाला है और वो ये सब लेना चाहे, तो उसके लिए ये दिक्कत हो जाती है कि हमने तो कभी पढ़ा ही नहीं है सोशल साइंसेस को. प्लस यू नो दैट सोशल साइंसेस दे जनरली गिव यू रिलेटिवली लेसर मार्क्स देन प्योर साइंसेस. मैथमेटिक्स में जितने नंबर आते हैं उतने नंबर सोशियोलॉजी में आ जाएं, थोड़ा मुश्किल है. Do you understand that? Because in science there is 1 and 0 kind of answer, yes or no kind of answer, but in social sciences there is maybe kind of answers. So the answer lies somewhere between 0 and 1. So you cannot say that it is perfectly correct or perfectly wrong, but in natural sciences that can happen. So for those who have their graduation background or school education background in science, for them the social sciences subjects become really tough. And if they go to the science arena, then they have to put in extra effort. They are increasing their burden. But when you look at geography, geography has two sections: physical geography and human geography. The physical geography part is derived from the natural sciences, whereas the human geography part is derived from the social sciences. So if you see that because 50% of the subjects comes from natural sciences and 50% of the subject comes from social sciences, it creates a kind of confidence in students of all backgrounds, whether from science or humanities, because उनको लगता है कि थोड़ा तो देखा हुआ है ही पहले से subject. And therefore engineers, doctors, science graduates, people who have done their education in agriculture, or even people who have studied social sciences and have studied geography as a part of their graduation, they are naturally attracted to geography. और क्योंकि इसमें natural science वाला element है, इसलिए इसमें marks भी अच्छे आते हैं, because natural sciences are always more rewarding than your social sciences, and it does not create any extra burden on you. Why? Because of the relevance that it has. तो comfortable बहुत सारे लोग फील करते हैं ज्योग्राफी को लेकर, क्योंकि भले आप साइंस से हो या ह्यूमैनिटीज से हो या कॉमर्स से हो, यू विल फाइंड समथिंग इन ज्योग्राफी विच यू कैन रिलेट टू प्राइमा फेसी. और जब कुछ जाना पहचाना सब मिलता है, देन यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड दैट योर इंटरेस्ट ग्रोज. द नेक्स्ट फैक्टर इज देयरफॉर इंटरेस्ट. इंटरेस्ट दो तरीके से हो सकता है. एक तो फेमिलियरिटी की वजह से आपको इंटरेस्ट आ रहा है, और दूसरा ये कि आप पढ़ रहे हो और पढ़ते पढ़ते आपको अच्छा लग रहा है, इसलिए आपको इंटरेस्ट आ रहा है. Irrespective of your background, you'll find something which is common in geography, which you have studied somewhere in your life. So, the awareness level is good with respect to the subject, therefore, it creates an immediate interest into the subject. And you will also see that as you study the subject, because the subject is so interesting and so beautiful, इसमें ज़्यादा याद रखने वाली चीज़ें हैं नहीं, समझने वाली चीज़ें हैं. And if you can do that, then your interest in the subject will be sustained. कई बार ऐसा होता है कि हम सब्जेक्ट ले तो लेते हैं ऑप्शनल, पढ़ना भी शुरू कर देते हैं, लेकिन थोड़े दिनों बाद हमारा इंटरेस्ट चला जाता है उसमें से. बट ज्योग्राफी hinges you to the interest domain. It doesn't allow you to move away from it because the subject is so beautiful. So, इंटरेस्ट अगर आपका नहीं भी है, समझ लो आपको समझ नहीं आ रहा है कि कौन सा ऑप्शनल लें, क्योंकि किसी में भी इंटरेस्ट नहीं आ रहा है या सब में इंटरेस्ट आ रहा है बराबर, आई वुड सजेस्ट दैट इफ यू पिक ज्योग्राफी, then definitely you will feel comfortable also along with the interest. Clear? So when you look at the relevance, geography has relevance. When you look at resources, geography has enough resources. Result, geography produces excellent results every year. Comfort level, definitely you will be comfortable क्योंकि किसी ना किसी स्ट्रीम से तो आपने ग्रेजुएशन की ही होगी. And geography, because it's a good amalgamation of physical sciences and your humanities or social sciences, then you will find some sort of comfort automatically with respect to geography. और इस comfort की वजह से आपका interest generate होगा, और जब आप इस subject को पढ़ोगे, then your interest would be sustained. Why? Because this subject is fully logical. It is fully rational. इसमें याद करने वाली चीजें बहुत कम हैं और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा चीज़ें समझने वाली हैं. Clear? And because you have some specific tools in geography, like one tool would be maps, it further increases the interest. अगर आप कोई चीज़ अपने आंखों के सामने देख लो एक मैप के फॉर्म में, तो आपका इंटरेस्ट ऑटोमेटिकली उस पर और बढ़ जाता है. Clear? So let us now try to analyze that what is this geography, or let us try to have a definition for geography. So what do we study in geography, or what is geography all about? Well, geography is the science of relationship that exists between man and environment. The core of geography is to understand this relationship that exists between man and environment. So, geography is all about the relationship between man and environment. अब देखो, environment जो है वो दो तरीके का होता है. One environment is the physical environment. It means the land, the water, the air, the plants, the animals that surround man. That is the natural environment, or you can say the physical environment. Let us call it as the natural environment. And the other environment is the social and economic and political environment which man has created over the surface of the earth. अगर आप अपने घर से बाहर निकलोगे, you will find air, you will also find maybe water, you'll find grasses, you'll find some ground. These are all created by nature. They are part of your natural environment. But when you look around, you may also find people, you might also find buildings, you might find roads, you might find vehicles. These are the part of the social environment or the cultural environment, socio-economic, politico-cultural environment which man has created. So can I say that environment is of two types? One is the natural environment, the other one is the man-made environment. An environment is everything that surrounds you. It is your surroundings that is known as environment. So what is the core theme in geography? The core theme in geography is to understand the relationship that exists between man and his environment. There are two types of environment: natural environment and man-made environment. This is the physical environment which is created by nature or God, if you believe in God, or else you just consider created by nature. Whereas this is the man-made environment, which is your social, economic, political. जैसे देखो, for example, forests. Forests are created by nature, but agricultural fields, they are an economic activity. Man has created the agricultural field. So it becomes a part of man-made environment. Roads, bridges, man has created this. Trade, services, man has created this. Settlements, even population is created by man through the process of procreation or reproduction. So environment is of two types. On the basis of this understanding, we can understand the syllabus of geography optional. मैं क्या कह रहा हूँ? Geography में सारी पढ़ाई बस इसी पे limited है कि man और environment के बीच में कैसा relationship है. और environment दो तरह के हैं: natural environment, man-made environment. This is sometimes also known as the cultural environment. When we study the natural environment, we are in the realm of physical geography. And when we study the man-made environment, we are in the realm of human geography, because this environment is created by humans. So on the basis of this very elementary understanding, we can divide the geography optional into two halves: the physical geography portion and the human geography portion. But UPSC has opted for a different kind of division. UPSC ऐसे दो पेपर बना सकती थी जिसमें एक पेपर में पूरा फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी पूछ ले और दूसरे पेपर में पूरा ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी पूछ ले. But UPSC has rather opted for a combination of physical and human geography in both the papers. But the distinction is created with respect to world physical, world human and Indian physical and Indian human. So जो पहला पेपर है इसमें वर्ल्ड के फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी और ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी पूछी जाती है. Whereas in the second paper, UPSC asks physical geography and human geography related to India. Clear? So this is the division that UPSC has opted for. In this class or in this session, I will try to analyze the physical geography syllabus of both paper 1 and 2, क्योंकि it makes sense. अच्छा, अगर हम geography के समझ लो कोई रिवर्स के बारे में पढ़ रहे हैं तो वर्ल्ड के रिवर्स और इंडिया के रिवर्स को साथ में समझ लें तो ज़्यादा अच्छा है. That's why we are taking the physical geography portions of paper 1 and paper 2 for the purposes of syllabus decoding together, so that we can get a good feel of the subject. As far as the human geography analysis, what books we should read for human geography, what kind of questions are asked in human geography, and what does the human geography syllabus mean, I will talk all about it in the second session, which is a continuation of this session. तो आपको दोनों सेशन मिलाकर एक अच्छा आइडिया मिल जाएगा कि what is geography all about. So I'm repeating one more time. Geography is nothing but it is the relationship that exists between man and environment. Environment is of two types: natural environment and man-made environment. Natural environment created by nature. It includes things like land, water, air, animals, plants, etc. Man-made environment includes population, settlements, agriculture, industry, trade, services, even geopolitics. So when we study the natural environment, we are in the realm of physical geography. When we study the man-made environment, we are in the realm of human geography. Clear? And UPSC has divided the syllabus of geography, complete geography, into two papers. One paper, or paper 1, deals with the general principles of geography. It means world, physical and human geography. This is the core of the subject, paper 1. Whereas paper 2 is application of the concepts that you have learned in paper 1 with respect to India. कि अगर आपने यहाँ पे फोल्ड माउंटेन्स के बारे में पढ़ा है तो यहाँ पर आप हिमालयाज की बात करेंगे स्पेसिफिकली. इट मीन्स ओनली इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ इंडिया. डू यू अंडरस्टैंड दिस? यहाँ पर अगर आपने प्लेन्स के बारे में पढ़ा है फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी में तो यहाँ पर आप बात करेंगे नॉर्थ इंडियन प्लेन्स, कोस्टल प्लेन्स etc. It means the same thing is studied here as well, but it is India centric. It is the application of the knowledge that you gain from your geography paper 1. Clear? Let us now decode the syllabus of physical geography that is there both in paper 1 and paper 2. जो पेपर 1 का सिलेबस है उसमें 10 यूनिट हैं और 10 यूनिट में से शुरू के 5 यूनिट, फर्स्ट 5 यूनिट्स which make the part A of paper 1 come from physical geography. और ये क्या यूनिट्स हैं? फर्स्ट यूनिट is known as geomorphology. Second unit is climatology. Third unit is oceanography. The fourth unit is biogeography. And the fifth unit is environmental geography. So 10 यूनिट है आपके पेपर 1 में. 5 यूनिट शुरू के जो पार्ट ए बनाते हैं मिलकर, they are drawn from the physical geography section. Whereas if you look at your paper 2 which is the India paper, वहां पे शुरू के 2 यूनिट, वहां पे भी 10 यूनिट है, शुरू के 2 यूनिट, the first one physical settings, and the second one resources. They are directly drawn from physical geography. But there is also the 10th unit which is contemporary issues, which has some sections of physical geography. यहाँ पे जैसे कि हम hazards के बारे में पढ़ते हैं, disasters के बारे में पढ़ते हैं, and I told you disaster management which is a part of your GS paper 3 comes out of this unit, the contemporary issues, which is the last unit of your geography paper 2 or the India paper. देखो फर्स्ट पेपर में जब 5 यूनिट हैं तो बड़ा आसान हो जाता है जज करना कि अगर पेपर 1 250 मार्क्स का है तो 125 मार्क्स हो गया फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी का. वेरी इजी. एंड डेफिनेटली दैट इज द केस. इफ यू लुक एट द क्वेश्चन पेपर्स ऑल्सो, द फर्स्ट 4 क्वेश्चंस, देयर आर 8 क्वेश्चंस which are subdivided into parts. The first 4 questions come from physical geography section, whereas the next 4 come from human geography. बट अगर आप इंडिया के पेपर को देखोगे तो वहां पे तो 10 यूनिट है जिसमें से 7 जो हैं वो ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी डोमिनेटेड या पूरी तरीके से ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी. whereas only 3 units, physical settings, resources and contemporary issues to some extent, to a substantial extent in fact, they come from physical geography. तो अगर ऐसा है और अगर ये पेपर भी 250 मार्क्स का है तो कितना हिस्सा है इसमें फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी का? Well, if you look at the question papers, again, the weightage is almost 50%. In fact, in the Indian geography paper, क्योंकि ये applied knowledge का paper है, you will find questions which have combination of both physical and human geography. Paper 1 जो है वर्ल्ड ज्योग्राफी या प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ ज्योग्राफी, यहां पर आप देखोगे क्वेश्चंस आर वेरी डायरेक्ट, दे आर ईदर फिजिकल और दे आर ह्यूमन. बट हियर इन पेपर 2 विच इज द इंडिया पेपर, देयर इज अ काइंड ऑफ ओवरलैपिंग इन द क्वेश्चंस इटसेल्फ, क्योंकि ये अप्लाइड फॉर्म ऑफ नॉलेज है आपका पेपर 2 का. इसलिए वैसे तो सिलेबस में सिर्फ 3 यूनिट लिखे हुए हैं, बट अगर आप उनका वेटेज चेक करोगे क्वेश्चंस में, direct and mixed questions or overlapping sections, you will find almost the same weightage. And that is the case. In fact, world geography हो या Indian geography हो, physical geography का weightage 50% है and the rest 50% is human geography. Clear? So, we understood that geography is the study of the relationship between man and environment. And when we study physical geography, we study things like lithosphere, the study of lithosphere. It means the mountains, the plateaus, the plains, their present distribution over the surface of the earth, their evolution over the time, and how they would be in the future. All of this study is geomorphology. It deals exclusively with lithosphere or the solid topmost portion of the earth. Okay? In geography, we have some tools. Tools like maps and tools like theories. We not only describe where the mountain is or where the physical feature is, but we also try to understand how it came into existence and what would it be in the future. Like geography में हम सिर्फ ये नहीं बोलते कि where are the Himalayas located. That would be description of the Himalayas, or how the Himalayas look like. That would be description of the Himalayas. But we also try to understand that how the Himalayas came into existence. What is its impact over the climate and the people of the region, and what is the possible future of the Himalayas. तो कहां पर है हिमालय, ये सब तो हम मैप्स के थ्रू दिखा सकते हैं, बिकॉज अल्टीमेट एम इन ज्योग्राफी इज टू क्रिएट मैप्स and to understand where a particular feature is located. But ये आया कैसे एग्जिस्टेंस में, इसके लिए हमें कुछ थ्योरीज, हाइपोथेसिस, इस तरीके की चीजों को पढ़ना पड़ता है, एंड दे आर वेरी इजी, डोंट वरी अबाउट इट. इससे हमें ये पता लगता है कि हिमालयाज आए कैसे एंड व्हाट विल हैपन टू देम इन द फ्यूचर. दैट ऑल्सो वी ट्राई टू प्रिडिक्ट लॉजिकली, गेस वर्क नहीं है, वाइल्ड गेस नहीं है, with the help of sound logic. And most of the times you would see that geographers successfully predict what would happen in the future. With respect to Himalayas, we again use some hypotheses, theories, some sort of laws, etc. Clear? So when we do all of that in physical geography and our focus area is only the lithosphere, the different things that are present in the lithosphere like mountains, plateaus, plains, or the different events that happen in the lithosphere, say for example earthquakes, volcanoes, etc., or erosion, we are in the realm of geomorphology. Climatology deals with, again, the distribution, the evolution, and the possible future shape of meteorological features. Meteorological features means, like, say for example, cyclones, how they came into existence, or tornadoes, rainfall, etc. मतलब जब हम वेदर या क्लाइमेट की स्टडी करते हैं या वेदर के किसी एलिमेंट की स्टडी करते हैं, जैसे टेम्परेचर हो गया, प्रेशर, वाटर वेपर, और इन सब से मिलके जो डिफरेंट फिनोमिनाज हैं जैसे साइक्लोन हो गए, या we are talking about the classification of the world climate. It means कहां पर किस तरीके का climate है. Like say for example, in the Sahara desert the climate is dry and arid, whereas in the equatorial belt the climate is wet and warm. तो कहां पर कैसा क्लाइमेट है? When we try to study that, we are doing a classification of the world climate. So when we do that, we are in the realm of climatology. Climatology is the study of everything that relates to atmosphere, temperature, pressure, rainfall, cyclones, everything. Classification of general climate. So climatology deals with atmosphere, or it is the study of air, whereas geomorphology deals with lithosphere. It is the study of the solid topmost crust of the earth. Oceanography is the study of water, and when we look at water, the biggest entity of water that is present over the surface of the earth is oceans, and therefore it deals with the properties of oceans like salinity, temperature, density, or the different kinds of ocean water circulations, say for example tides, currents, waves, etc. We study different theories regarding the origin of oceans, or we study different theories with respect to features of oceans like the coral reefs, for example. We also try to understand that what do we mean by the quantities of ocean or the aspects of ocean when we talk about things like, say, ocean acidification, ocean resources, ocean minerals, ocean deposits, etc. So the study of oceans or water is oceanography, which is the third unit. The fourth unit, biogeography, does the same. It studies the aspects, the distribution, the evolution, and the possible future of soil mostly. So it deals mostly with the soil geography. Soil is the topmost skin of the earth, which lies over the hard rock bed. Environmental geography is the study of the flora and fauna. India physical setting is, we study all of this with respect to India. Resources means the energy resources, the mineral resources, and the ferrous and the non-ferrous resources, different kind of resources with respect to India. When we do that, we are in the realm of resources, and contemporary issues, I've already told you, it deals with hazards, disasters, etc. Flood, cyclone, warning systems, how people should react, population, disaster management, etc. Clear? So that is your contemporary issues. Together, they make your physical geography syllabus in both paper 1 and paper 2. Clear? Let's now have a look at what resources are necessary for preparing physical geography portions of your syllabus. A big worry among aspirants is that which resources should they follow for the physical geography sections, both for paper 1 and paper 2. Here I am trying to give you a comprehensive list of books that you need to follow for your physical geography sections. और मैंने आपको पहले ही बताया था that geography is a very popular optional which has no dearth of resources. So these books are easily available to you. I will try to divide these books on two bases. First is on the basis of paper 1 and paper 2, and second, the basic books, and then the books that you should read for further broadening your knowledge base. So the basic books that you should start with if you are choosing geography as your optional and you are thinking of preparing the physical geography section. तो basic book जो होगी आपकी वो होगी पहले 6th to 10th standard NCERT. See, these books are very excellent to understand complex concepts of geography. कि 6 to 10 स्टैंडर्ड की बुक्स हैं, तो बच्चों के लिए लिखी हुई बुक्स हैं. जो लैंग्वेज है इसमें वो बहुत सिंपल है, एंड दैट्स वाई कॉम्प्लेक्स कॉन्सेप्ट्स जो होते हैं, अगर आपने कोई स्टैंडर्ड बुक उठा ली तो हो सकता है आपको थोड़ी दिक्कत आए. व्हेन यू रीड द कंटेंट ऑफ दिस बुक्स और दीज बुक्स NCERTs, you get familiarity with the elements of the concepts which are presented in a simple manner. तो यहाँ से तो आपकी शुरुआत होनी चाहिए. Once you are done with it, and read only the physical geography sections, because we are talking about physical geography now, then you should graduate to the 11th and 12th standard NCERTs. Yeah. Both these books have sections of physical geography, and pick those books. जब आप 6 to 10th की NCERT पढ़ते हैं तो आपको बेसिक कॉन्सेप्ट्स तो क्लियर हो जाते हैं, बट यू लर्न न्यू कॉन्सेप्ट्स एंड योर ओल्ड कॉन्सेप्ट्स आर ऑल्सो फर्दर पॉलिश्ड when you read 11th and 12th standard NCERT. अगर आप ये NCERTs पहले ही पढ़ लें ऑप्शनल की पढ़ाई शुरू करने से पहले, then you will see that you would be at a relative advantage with respect to your fellow competitors. Once you are done with this, then you should go for the G.C. Leong Certificate in Physical and Human Geography. So you've got a geography book written by a Malaysian scholar. His name Go Che Leong. This is a very small book, ज़्यादा मोटी नहीं है. So if you read this book, then you will have further broadening of your knowledge with respect to geography as a subject. एक बार जब आपका ये complete हो जाए, then as you start your optional, go for the first book, which is Made Simple. This is a book by Rupa Publications. And it has two sections. One is physical geography, another one is human geography. So just pick the physical geography section. This should be your first starting book for physical geography. Here you will get the idea of geomorphology, oceanography, climatology, environmental geography in the elementary sense. मतलब ये आपको एक क्विक टूर करवा देगा पूरे फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी का. Then when you are looking for specific books for your paper 1, there are 4 books which I would suggest. The first one is Geomorphology. This is by Sawinder Singh. देखो, there is a book of Sawinder Singh called Physical Geography. I would not suggest that because that book does not cover every topic of the syllabus. Rather, you should pick 4 books which are written by Sawinder Singh: Geomorphology, Climatology, third is Oceanography, and the 4th one is Environmental Geography by Sawinder Singh. All of them by Sawinder Singh. You will see that environmental geography completes both the biogeography and the environmental geography. It means the 4th and the 5th unit of your paper 1. तो paper 1 की पूरी तैयारी हो जाती है if you just read these 4 books. Again I am saying, don't go for Sawinder Singh Physical Geography. Physical Geography में ये सारे सब कुछ एक साथ दिए हुए हैं, और आपको पता है जब सब कुछ एक साथ करोगे आप, there would be certain things that you would miss. Every topic of the syllabus is well covered through these 4 books. बट अगर आप ये सोच रहे हो कि 4 किताबें पढ़नी पड़ेगी फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी के लिए, लेट मी टेल यू वन थिंग, दैट दे आर वेरी लॉजिकल इन नेचर. So you would not have to keep a lot in your mind just to understand. But at the very outset, I told you that there is no shortcut for success in this examination. कोई अगर आपसे ये कहे that no need of reading books and you can qualify the examination, he is or she is lying. Let me tell you this from my experience of training aspirants, even successful aspirants. And I have not met a single aspirant who has succeeded in this examination who claims that he has not studied books. And if he or she is making that claim, let me tell you, that's a false claim. It cannot happen. In the class, you can get the concepts clear, but to have additional reading over it, you need to read the books. Yes, obviously, you will have your notes and your notes can get you good marks as well. But to have excellent marks, you need to add something more जो आपके aspirants, fellow aspirants नहीं add कर रहे होंगे. क्योंकि notes तो सबके पास होंगे, सभी ने पढ़ा होगा, बहुत अच्छे से याद भी कर लिया होगा कुछ लोगों ने, तो बिल्कुल वही लिख देंगे. But the point is that how much you have added more to the notes. And that can happen only when you read the books. When I train the aspirants, what I do is I give them small booklets from each of these units. And in that booklet, I create the gist of these books, or I have created the gist of these books. तो वो booklets भी अगर पढ़ लो तो भी बहुत है. But I would say that if you really want to score 300 plus or more in geography, मतलब आपको बहुत अच्छे नंबर चाहिए geography में और आप बहुत अच्छा करना चाहते हो geography में, then I would suggest you go through these books. They are indispensable for scoring great marks. आपको पढ़ना ही पड़ेगा. Clear? So as far as paper 1 is concerned, what am I saying? First, read the Made Simple Rupa publication Physical Geography, and then 4 books by Sawinder Singh. All of them you can get over, say, some e-commerce website or to the nearest store which has UPSC material. Geomorphology, Climatology, Oceanography and Environmental Geography, all by Sawinder Singh. Clear? Again I am saying, do not go for the Physical Geography by Sawinder Singh because that book is incomplete. ये बहुत बड़ा एक मिस्टेक करते हैं एस्पिरेंट, that they pick this book and then they struggle. Clear? पेपर 2 पे आ जाते हैं. Paper 2, which is the India section. Here I would suggest just one book. That's it. And that is D.R. Khullar, A Comprehensive Geography of India. This book is enough for your physical and human geography also. तो ये book अगर आपके पास है तो अच्छी बात है, अगर नहीं है, and if you are thinking of geography, choosing geography, I would say that this is an indispensable book which you should have. This should be in your armory so that you can sharpen your skills with respect to Indian geography. One thing that you need to understand with geography is you do not have to read everything in the books, but only relevant things which make sense with respect to the examination and are in tune with the syllabus. Concepts आपके clear होने चाहिए, and this is why you need, say, someone like a mentor or some help. अगर आपके concepts clear हो जाते हैं, you can clear your concepts by self-study as well. Once you are clear with your concepts, then you should go for the books so as to add more material over your concepts so that you can write excellent answers. Clear? Apart from the books, what else should you read for physical geography? I would say that one thing that is necessary for physical geography is Yojana magazine. The other one is Kurukshetra. Both are small magazines. बहुत ज़्यादा बल्कि नहीं है, एंड अगर आप इनको रेगुलरली पढ़ते रहोगे तो इट विल हेल्प यू नॉट ओनली इन योर फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी एरिया बट ऑल्सो इन योर ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी एरिया. Clear? So Yojana and Kurukshetra, these two magazines you can add with these books to complete your knowledge with respect to physical geography. जो लोग थोड़ा और पढ़ना चाहते हैं उनके लिए मैं ये कहूँगा, there is a third magazine which is known as Geography and You. If you read this magazine, again you will see that you will get some more insights about the subject. अगर आप ये सोचते हो कि नहीं एक कॉपी पढ़ेंगे उसमें सब लिख लेंगे जैसे स्कूल में कॉलेज में होता था, उससे लिख के पढ़ के पास हो जाएंगे और आईएएस बन जाएंगे, अगर इतना आसान होता तो फिर तो जितने लोग प्रिपेयर कर रहे हैं सभी बन गए होते. यू नीड टू डू हार्ड वर्क. हार्ड वर्क से मत घबराओ, बट ऐसा भी हार्ड वर्क नहीं जो आपको रिजल्ट्स ना देता हो. सो हार्ड वर्क विथ अ स्मार्ट माइंड. और अगर आपने ज्योग्राफी चूज कर लिया तो पहले ही आपने समझदारी तो दिखा दी है. और ज्योग्राफी में पढ़ें क्या, उसके लिए इफ यू जस्ट रीड दीज बुक्स you will find that you are in excellent space to write excellent answers. Clear? Now, you must keep this in mind that I have assumed one thing, that you are regularly reading the newspaper. क्योंकि न्यूज़पेपर में आपको कई करंट न्यूज़ मिलते हैं, जैसे कि कोई साइक्लोन आ गया, कहीं पे अर्थक्वेक हो गया, या समझ लो कहीं पर कोई पैंडमिक हो गया, लाइक कोविड-19 एज इट हैपेंड ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड. तो उससे आपको करंट मटेरियल मिलता है जो आप अपने स्टैटिक मटेरियल जो आप बुक से लर्न करते हो उसके साथ ऐड कर सकते हो. सो विच न्यूज़पेपर शुड यू रीड? I would suggest any newspaper, any standard newspaper, be it the Hindu, the Indian Express, or any newspaper. But preferably read the Hindu and the Indian Express, the news on environment. क्योंकि ज़्यादा न्यूज़ जो होती है ज्योग्राफी से वो एनवायरनमेंट से रिलेटेड होती है, क्लाइमेट से रिलेटेड होती है. क्लाइमेट चेंज की बात हो सकती है, आर्कटिक में आइस मेल्ट हो रहा है, या हिमालयाज में टूरिज्म की वजह से क्या हो रहा है. इफ यू लर्न दोज काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स फ्रॉम न्यूज़पेपर्स रेगुलरली देन डेफिनेटली यू कैन यूज दोज थिंग्स इन योर आंसर्स. तो कौन से बुक आप पढ़ोगे? सबसे पहले तो आपको एनसीईआरटी पढ़नी चाहिए, फिर जीसी लो. आप चाहो तो एनसीईआरटी पढ़ के डायरेक्ट इन बुक्स पे आ सकते हो, बट इफ यू वांट टू रियली मास्टर द सब्जेक्ट देन आई वुड सजेस्ट आफ्टर रीडिंग द एनसीईआरटी आप जीसी लियोंग को पढ़ लें. फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी सेक्शंस, ह्यूमन की अभी हम बात नहीं कर रहे हैं. उसके बाद आप मेड सिंपल रूपा पब्लिकेशन फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी वाली जो बुक है वो पढ़िए, एंड देन you pick these 4 books, Sawinder Singh, and it will complete the part A of paper 1 which deals with physical geography. And as far as the physical geography sections of Indian geography paper is concerned, just pick D.R. Khullar. अगर आप इस बुक से बहुत ज़्यादा कंफर्टेबल नहीं है क्योंकि आपको लग रहा है कि बुक बहुत बल्कि है या इसमें फैक्ट्स बहुत ज़्यादा है, then what you can do is you can go for a substitute of this, which is Indian Geography by Majid Hussain. Often aspirants pick this book as well, but अगर आप मुझसे पूछोगे कि कौन सी बुक अच्छी है दोनों में से, then I will say it is D.R. Khullar. बुक थोड़ी मोटी है इसके मुकाबले. The reason is this book is regularly revised and new data gets added. तो डेटा से ज़्यादा हमें परेशान नहीं होना चाहिए. डेटा तो हमें बाद में भी मिल सकता है, न्यूज़पेपर से भी मिल सकता है, इकोनॉमिक सर्वे से भी मिल सकता है, which is published every year. It gives us some concepts with respect to physical geography of India which are better and comprehensively dealt when compared to the concepts that are there in this book. Majid Hussain. Clear? Or as I told you that if you are moving in right fashion, means your concepts are clear and then you are reading these books as a reference, You can complete all of it in 2 to 3 months. ये पॉसिबल है अगर आप ईमानदारी से पढ़ाई कर रहे हैं. क्लियर? और ये पॉसिबल है तभी तो लोग कर रहे हैं और तभी तो लोग ज्योग्राफी के लिए इतना ज़्यादा एक्साइटेड रहते हैं. दे चूज ज्योग्राफी so lavishly because of the possibility of completing everything within 2 to 3 months. Clear? So these are the suggested reading material for your physical geography, both paper 1 and paper 2. But आपको पता है कि इससे तो आपको theoretical knowledge मिल गई. Practical knowledge को improve करने के लिए या अंडरस्टैंडिंग को इम्प्रूव करने के लिए यू ऑल्सो नीड अ बुक विच हैज़ गुड कलेक्शन ऑफ मैप्स. तो ये मैप्स, वो बुक जिसमें मैप्स हो उसे एटलस कहते हैं. एंड देर आर 2 एटलसेस दैट यू नीड टू रीड. फर्स्ट वन इज द ओरिएंट ब्लैक स्वान atlas, and then there is the Oxford atlas, school atlas. Clear? This one is mostly good for the Indian geography paper. एक क्वेश्चन आता है फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी में या ज्योग्राफी में बोल लो मैप मार्किंग से, और वो मैप मार्किंग सिर्फ पेपर 2 से रिलेट करके आता है मेंस में. There is no map marking for paper 1 as a question, but the first question every year in paper 2 relates to map marking, जिसमें 10 locations दिए होते हैं, mostly physical locations जिसको आपको मैप में पॉइंट करना होता है और उसके बारे में you have to write 2 to 3 lines. That's what you need to do. Okay? Now, if you look at this, that if you have good understanding of the Oxford Atlas and the Orient Black Swan Atlas, you will be in a good position to handle this map marking question. Clear? So as far as book is concerned, or books are concerned, or material is concerned for physical geography, I'm repeating one more time, the NCRTs, the Gochi Leong, the Made Simple Rupa Publication Physical Geography book, the 4 books of Sawinder Singh for paper 1, and D.R. Khullar's book Indian Comprehensive Geography for paper 2, along with the magazines Yojana and Kurukshetra, if possible geography, and you, and the 2 atlases. मत घबराओ, ये मैटर बहुत दिखता है, बोलने में बहुत ज़्यादा लगता है, but when you interpret their content with respect to your syllabus, you will find that they are easy to read. Clear? Let us now take a sample topic from physical geography to relate to this subject, or to understand or to get the feel of physical geography. Let's do that. So the topic that we will discuss is the general circulation of atmosphere. It comes from the climatology topic of the geography paper 1. Why am I discussing this topic? Because most of the people have seen a picture of general circulation of atmosphere in the NCRTs. So there is some sort of familiarity. And also this topic is very relevant for the examination. In 2019, for example, a question was asked on tricellular meridional model. And this tricellular meridional model is extracted from the understanding of general circulation of the atmosphere. What do we mean by general circulation of the atmosphere? By that we mean that how are the pressure belts distributed over the surface of the earth, and how is air moving? Moving air is known as wind, or how is wind blowing at the global scale? Winds can blow at the global scale, they can blow at the regional scale or at local scale. When we analyze the movement of wind at the global scale in relation to distribution of pressure belts, we are talking about the general circulation of air. Global winds are also known as planetary winds because they cover the entire planet. They are also known as prevailing winds because they blow throughout the year. But to understand general circulation of atmosphere, we must arm ourselves with some basic concepts. So first I will discuss some basic concepts regarding temperature, pressure, Coriolis force, etc. And once we understand these basic concepts, we will try to understand the general circulation of the atmosphere. So let's get started. The first thing to understand the general circulation of atmosphere, also known as general circulation of air, is what is the relationship that exists between temperature and pressure. See, temperature, or what are the sources of temperature for Earth? Earth can receive heat either from the sun or from the interior of the Earth primarily. So these are two main sources. But when we talk about temperature, the impact of sun with respect to the generation of heat over the Earth's surface is most pronounced. It means the sun is the main source of heat for Earth, and the measurement of heat, it means the degree of hotness or the degree of coldness, is temperature. What is pressure? Pressure का मतलब क्या होता है? आप कहते हो कि मुझ पे बहुत pressure पड़ गया. Pressure is a kind of load which is created due to the weight of an object. Like for example, if I keep my mobile over my hand, I would say that due to the weight of my mobile, my hand is experiencing a pressure. So temperature is the measurement of hotness or coldness, whereas pressure is the weight exerted by an overlying object. Now, this overlying object can be atmosphere itself, because you know that the Earth is surrounded by a blanket of gases, which is nothing but the atmosphere. And if I take a unit column in that atmosphere, it would contain gaseous particle or gaseous particles, water vapor, dust particles, etc. And all these elements would exert a weight over the surface of the Earth. This weight is known as atmospheric pressure, or popularly called as air pressure. So there is a relationship between temperature and pressure. We'll try to find out that relationship first. So what am I saying? I'm saying that temperature is the measurement of the degree of hotness or coldness of a substance. So temperature measure करके हमें ये पता लगता है कि ये गर्म है या ठंडा है. Whereas pressure is the force which is generated due to the weight of an overlying object. And over the surface of the Earth, there is a cover of gases. So if I measure the force generated by the weight of this cover of gases, I am talking about atmospheric pressure. Now, look here. Suppose this is a surface of the Earth. This is a part of the surface of the Earth which is very hot, whereas this is another part of the surface of the Earth which is very cold. Now, the air which would be resting over this hot surface will gain heat from the surface. Why? Because the laws of conduction says that when two bodies of different temperature come in contact with each other, heat flows from the hotter body to the colder body till both the bodies attain same temperature or the contact is broken. So it's simple law of conductional heat transfer. So what am I saying? I'm saying that there is a very hot surface over the Earth's surface and there is an air parcel or an air column which has come in contact with this hot surface. The temperature of the air parcel is relatively less when compared to the temperature of the surface. मतलब ये air parcel ठंडा है जब आप इसे surface के मुकाबले में compare करोगे. Now what happens as this air parcel comes in contact with the surface? There is conductional heat transfer from the surface to the air parcel. Why? Because laws of conduction says that when two bodies of different temperature come in contact with each other, heat always flows from the hotter body to the colder body. अच्छा, आपको ये बात पता होगा कि when heat energy is given to anything, it expands. Why does it expand? Because the molecules get excited and the molecules start moving away from each other. As the molecules move away from each other, the intermolecular gap increases and thus the volume increases. In simple words, that if you apply heat to anything, it will expand. Addition of heat causes expansion. Whereas if you subtract heat from anything, it will contract or it will shrink. जैसे कि if you place an iron nail in hot sun, after some time, if you measure its volume, it will grow. Why? Because it has absorbed heat. Whereas if you keep an iron nail in ice for a long period of time, and then if you pick it and if you measure it very appropriately with the help of most sophisticated instruments, you will find there is a reduction in its volume. तो एक चीज तो हम ये मान सकते हैं that whenever there is application of heat, there is expansion of the object and there is increase in volume. Whereas whenever there is subtraction of heat, there is contraction in the object and thereby a reduction in volume. तो चलो फिर से इसी knowledge को apply करते हैं यहाँ पर. It's a basic knowledge which we have learned from our schools. So this air parcel, it is relatively colder when compared to the surface, which is very hot surface. So this absorbs a lot of heat from the surface, the air parcel. And if it absorbs a lot of heat, you can understand that it will expand. As it will expand, what would happen? Its volume would increase. और volume में increase कब आता है? When the intermolecular gap between the molecules increases. यहाँ पे gap जो है कम था, but हर molecule को heat मिला, तो उसमें energy आ गई, excitation आ गया, तो वो randomly move करने लग गया, और move करने पर दो molecule के बीच का distance बढ़ने लग गया. And when that happened, you know that there was an expansion in the volume. Or I can also say that whenever there is an expansion in the volume, there is a reduction in the density. Why? Because volume and density are inversely proportional. कोई भी चीज़ जब बड़ी होती जाएगी वॉल्यूम में, उसमें इंटरमोलिकुलर गैप और बढ़ता रहेगा. Then the mass per unit volume will decrease, which is density. Density is nothing but the mass per unit volume. Mass means number of molecules per unit volume. यहाँ पर अगर हम देखेंगे per unit, समझ लो एक सेंटीमीटर क्यूब ऐसा हमने ले लिया एक वॉल्यूम. Here maybe I am finding 2 molecules at this point. But on the application of heat, if I take the same volume, it means per unit volume, Now the molecules is only one. Why? Because the intermolecular gap has increased due to the absorption of heat. And if that happens, then the density drops. और किसी भी चीज की अगर डेंसिटी नीचे जाती है, then it becomes lighter. मतलब वो हल्की होने लगती है वो चीज. If the density is too much, it becomes heavier. And when the density drops, there is a reduction in weight. Why? Because you know that weight is equals to mass into gravity. And we know density is mass per unit volume. Say for example grams per centimeter cube, and grams is nothing but mass. So by these two equations we can find a direct relationship between weight and density. And that relation is, forget about the mathematical calculation, that relation is that अगर किसी चीज की डेंसिटी कम होगी तो वो हल्का होने लगेगा, अगर डेंसिटी बढ़ेगी तो वो भारी होने लगेगा. ये तो सिंपल लॉजिक भी है. क्लियर? तो चलो यहां तक फिर से समझ लेते हैं. व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से, आई एम सेइंग दैट व्हेन the air parcel came in contact with the hot surface, it absorbed heat from the surface, and as a result of the absorption of heat, what happened is that its volume increased. As its volume increased, its density dropped, and as density dropped, weight also dropped, because anything which has lesser density will have less weight, anything which has more density will have more weight. Do you understand that? So it became lighter. And you know, lighter things rise, like heavier things sink, lighter things rise. That's why a hot air balloon, आपने देखा होगा, hot air balloon में जब आप heat apply करते हो air को तो वो expansion होता है, उसमें density कम हो जाती है और वो हल्का हो जाता है, and that's why a hot air balloon flies up in the air. So this would now react like that, and so this air parcel would move up in this direction. If it moves up, then the pressure that it was exerting on the surface will also reduce. What I'm trying to say is, when I keep my mobile over my hand, it exerts a weight on my hand, and that is the pressure created by the weight of the mobile. But if I lift it, then there is a reduction in pressure. But if I press it, there is a more generation of pressure. तो अगर कोई भी चीज lift होगी, then there would be a relaxation in the force which is pressure. Whereas whenever something would sink, if something would rise, there is a relaxation in pressure. If something would sink, there is further addition in pressure, क्योंकि आप और force लगा रहे हो उस पे. Do you understand that? Now look here. If this air parcel rises, then automatically what kind of pressure would be created here? Here there would be generation of low pressure. It means reduction in pressure. तो क्या रिलेशनशिप निकल कर आया टेम्परेचर और प्रेशर के बीच में? Higher the temperature, lower the pressure. It means those areas which will have high temperature will record low pressures, and those areas which would have low temperature would have high pressure. Let us try to understand that as well. Look here, suppose there is an air parcel which is relatively warmer than this surface. It means the temperature of this air parcel is more when compared to this surface. This surface is extremely cold. समझ लो ये ice से बना हुआ है ये surface. Something like that. Clear? समझ लो एक glacier के ऊपर एक air parcel आकर rest होता है. Now what happens is, this is relatively warmer than the surface. So it will start losing heat to the surface. Why? Because the law of conduction says when two bodies of different temperature come in contact with each other, heat flows from the hotter body to the colder body. And I told you that the temperature of this air parcel is relatively more than the temperature of this surface. ये surface ठंडा है air parcel के मुकाबले, and that's why the heat will flow from the air parcel to the surface. And if there is release of heat, what would happen? There is contraction. Like if there is addition of heat, there is expansion. If there is release of heat, there is contraction. So ये air parcel और छोटा हो जाएगा. And if that happens, you know, there is shrinking, then what would happen to density? Density would increase. What is density? Density is mass per unit volume, or the number of molecules per unit volume. They would increase. And if the density increases, what would happen to weight? The weight will also increase, because weight and density are directly related. If there is reduction in density, there would be reduction in weight. If there is increase in density, there would be increase in weight. And when there would be increase in density, when there is shrinking of the object, when there would be reduction in density, when there is expansion in the object. So look here, in this case, as the air parcel came in contact with the cold surface, it lost heat to the surface. As it lost heat to the surface, it shrank. As it shrank, there was increase in its density, because whenever there is shrinking, there is increase in density, and the consequence of it, there is increase in weight. और अगर weight बढ़ेगा, the object will sink. So this air parcel would start sinking. It means it will start moving in this direction. And if this is the case, you can understand that it would create more pressure. If lifting reduces pressure, then sinking would create pressure. Just the opposite, logical mind. So if it sinks, then it would generate high pressure area. तो क्या समझ में आया? यहाँ तक ये समझ में आ गया that whenever you will have a hot surface, there would be a low pressure area that would be generated. And whenever you would have a cold surface, you would have a high pressure area generated. So the relationship between temperature and air pressure is inverse or indirect. It means those places which are hot over the surface of the earth, they will have low air pressure. Whereas those surfaces which are cold over the surface of the earth, they would have high pressure. Just an example, the deserts, or think of the equatorial areas. The equatorial areas, for example, they are hot areas. They would have low pressure. Whereas think of the poles. Poles are cold areas. Therefore, they would have high pressure. Lower temperature creates high pressure. Higher temperature creates low pressure. So the relationship is inverse between temperature and pressure. Do you understand that? Now, you know, you have been studying about it, that air always blows from high pressure to low pressure areas. ऐसा क्यों होता है? Think of this. Look here. Suppose this is a low pressure area and this is a high pressure area. Here air is rising, whereas here air is sinking. So there is accumulation of air at this point. Whereas as air is rising from here, there is a kind of vacuum being created at this area. And to fill that vacuum, air from the surplus zone flows to the deficit zone. And this movement of air from high pressure area to low pressure area is known as wind. Wind is the horizontal movement of air. This is vertical movement, this is horizontal movement. Is the horizontal movement of air from high pressure area to low pressure area. It means we can also say that if we have two areas, one hot and another one cold, then air would blow from colder area to hotter area. Why? Because hotter area would generate low pressure and colder area would generate high pressure. Why? Because temperature and pressure are inversely related. Do you understand that? Now, let us try to evolve more on this understanding. And the next thing that we will try to understand is that what happens next. It means when the air rises, what happens next? So far we have understood one thing, that if it is a hot area, it would generate low pressure, and if it is a cold area, it would generate high pressure. And in areas of low pressure, air rises, and in areas of high pressure, air sinks. Because of this sinking, there is high pressure and there is accumulation of air here, whereas there is vacuum sort of conditions being created here. This is a surplus zone, whereas this is a deficit zone because air is rising from here. So this part becomes kind of vacuum, whereas this part there is accumulation of air. And you know that when this happens, air from the area of surplus flows to the or blows to the area of deficit. So air starts moving from the high pressure area to the low pressure area, and this is known as wind. Always keep one thing in mind, that wind always blows from high pressure to low pressure areas. Clear? But let us now focus on this rising air one more time. Till what height will this air rise? See, air will rise till the time it is lighter than its surrounding air. If it is lighter than its surrounding air, it will keep on rising. If it is colder than its surrounding air, it would sink. Look here, what am I saying? Suppose this is the surrounding air and I am talking about this rising air. This rising air will keep on rising till the time it is warmer than its surrounding air. If it becomes colder than its surrounding air, it would sink. But if its temperature is equal to the surrounding air, then it would neither rise nor sink, but it would flow like this. Or it would just spread rather than rising or sinking. So think of this. Suppose this air, rising air, has a temperature of 20 degree. And let me give you some temperature levels of the surroundings. The temperature levels of the surroundings are, here suppose it is 10 degree, here it is 12 degree, here it is 20 degree, or rather think of this something like this, that suppose this air is 20 degree and suppose this is 12 degree surrounding air, and then this is 10 degree, then it is 5 degree, then it is 2 degree. It means as we are going up, the temperature is falling. That generally happens in the atmosphere. That's why glaciers are found at the mountain peaks. So ऐसे imagine करके देख लो कि surrounding temperature जो है इस level पे fall हो रहा है. Clear? And this air, it will keep on rising till the time it is warmer than its environment. तो यहाँ पर देखो, जहाँ पर 12 डिग्री है surface level पे, it is warmer than its environment, so it will rise. Here, suppose this air on rising, it becomes cooler a bit, and so its new temperature is, say, 12 degree. Because as it rises, what happens is that it further spreads because of the fall in the air pressure. तो ये बात तो clear हो गई that over hot surfaces air rise and over cold surfaces air sink, and whenever you would have an area from where air rises, you would have low pressure, and whenever you will have an area over which air sinks, you will have high pressure. And we also understand now that air always blows from high pressure to low pressure, and such movement of air is known as wind. Okay. Now, before we further our understanding with respect to air movements, let us understand how pressure changes. Now, you know that atmospheric pressure is nothing but the force exerted by a unit column of air when it is stretched from the surface of the earth to the top of the atmosphere. It means if I take a unit column of air from the surface of the earth and stretch it up to the top of the atmosphere, then the force that would be generated by all the gases, water vapor, dust particles, etc. that are present in this column of air will be the atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure is simply the weight exerted by the air column. Now, look here one thing, that generally as we increase the altitude, it means as we increase the height, what happens is the atmosphere becomes more and more rarefied. Rarefied means that the number of molecules, gas molecules, water vapor molecules, dust particles, they all reduce as we increase the height. Why? Because this atmosphere remains sticked to the earth due to Earth's gravitational force. And Earth's gravitational force is maximum near the surface of the earth rather than at the top of the atmosphere. Therefore, most of the gaseous particles or water vapor particles or dust particles, they are concentrated near the surface of the earth because the gravitational force is more near the surface of the earth. Think of a mountain. What I am trying to say is, if you go near the foothill or the hill of the mountain, or the foot of the mountain rather, you will find that the atmospheric density is more. But as you increase the height, you will find that the density of the air reduces. Why? Because the gravity is maximum near the surface and the force of gravity reduces with increase in height. अब आप चांद के पास होगे तो अर्थ की ग्रेविटी ज़्यादा फील होगी या अर्थ के पास होगे तो ज़्यादा फील होगी सरफेस के पास? ऑब्वियसली व्हेन यू आर नियर द सरफेस ऑफ द अर्थ. तो अगर ये ट्रू है with respect to moon and earth, it is also true with respect to lower atmosphere and upper atmosphere. Upper atmosphere will always experience lesser gravitational force. If there is lesser gravitational force, then obviously you can understand that there would be less particles. If there is more gravitational force, there would be more concentration of particles here. Yes, simple शब्दों में अगर बोलें that as you increase the height, the atmospheric pressure drops. And why does that happen? Because look here, what is atmospheric pressure? It is the weight exerted by the unit volume of or unit column of air when measured from the earth's surface till the top of the atmosphere. अब अगर आप इस पॉइंट पे एयर प्रेशर मेजर करोगे तो पूरा एयर कॉलम का वेट वहां पर पड़ेगा. बट अगर आप इस हाइट पे करोगे, suppose this is a mountain and you're doing it at this height, then you are taking into consideration only this part of the air column. अगर आप और ऊपर जाओगे, suppose it's a tall mountain, then you are measuring only up to this part. It means the size of the column is reducing as you are increasing the height. अगर size of the column कम होगा तो उसके अंदर के particles भी कम हो रहे मतलब weight भी कम हो रहा है उसका. और air pressure is all about the force which is generated out of the weight of the air column. So simply put, air pressure, it reduces with increase in height. तो ये एक चीज हमको समझ लेनी चाहिए. Also one thing, that as we increase the height, especially in the lower layer of the atmosphere, which is known as the troposphere, the atmosphere is divided into different layers. Troposphere, then you have the stratosphere, which is the second layer. Then you have the mesosphere. Then you have the last layer, which is thermosphere, which is divided into two parts. First is ionosphere, and then you have the exosphere. They two combinedly make the thermosphere. Now, this exosphere slowly merges with outside space. So what am I saying? This is the layered structure of the atmosphere. In the lowest layer, which is troposphere, or which is closest to the earth, what happens is, with increase in height, there is also decrease in temperature. And why is there decrease in temperature? Because in the atmosphere, there are some gases called greenhouse gases. Now these greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, sulfur dioxide, etc., even water vapor. Water vapor has the properties of a greenhouse gas. Greenhouse gases are those who are almost transparent to the sunlight, but they are opaque to the outgoing terrestrial radiation. Now what happens is, Earth absorbs heat energy from the sun, but after absorbing heat energy during the day, during the night the Earth loses that heat. That heat is known as terrestrial outgoing heat. This heat, which comes from the sun, is known as incoming solar radiation or insolation. So you can understand that during the day the Earth receives heat from the sun, and during the night the heat is lost. This is known as the heat balance of the Earth. If Earth only keeps on receiving heat and loses no heat, then Earth would become a ball of fire. Do you understand that? So as to maintain the heat balance, what Earth does is, Earth captures heat from the sun, because sun is the major source of heat for Earth, though Earth also gets some heat when there is volcanic eruption or earthquake or anything like that. It means some heat is generated from the interior of the Earth as well. But when you compared with the heat which Earth receives from sun, that interior heat is almost negligible. So we can say that sun is the primary source of heat for Earth. Clear? So during the day, the Earth absorbs the sunlight, becomes hot, and during the night, the Earth loses that light or loses that heat which is generated by that sunlight, and this is known as outgoing terrestrial radiation. अब देखो एक बात, greenhouse gases जैसे carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, sulfur dioxide, even water vapor, though water vapor is not known as a greenhouse gas, but it has the properties of a greenhouse gas. And what is their property? They are transparent to the insolation. मतलब जो sunlight आती है उसको वो अपने आप से पास होने देते हैं, but they are opaque or they act as obstruction to the outgoing terrestrial radiation. मतलब अर्थ से जो हीट रिलीज होती है इसको वो ट्रैप कर लेते हैं. Do you understand that? Now you tell me that if the density of the atmosphere is most near the surface, then the number of greenhouse gases would also be more near the surface. Hence, the trapping of heat would also be more near the surface. तो जैसे एटमॉस्फेयर की ओवरऑल डेंसिटी कम होती है विथ इंक्रीज इन हाइट, ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस की भी ओवरऑल डेंसिटी कम होगी विथ इंक्रीज इन हाइट, बिकॉज कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड, मोनोऑक्साइड, सल्फर डाइऑक्साइड, वाटर वेपर, दे आर आफ्टर ऑल पार्ट ऑफ द एटमॉस्फेयर इटसेल्फ. तो अगर पूरे एटमॉस्फेयर की डेंसिटी कम हो रही है तो ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस की भी डेंसिटी कम होगी. It means at any given point of time there would be more greenhouse gases at lower levels than upper levels, and greenhouse gases, they absorb the outgoing terrestrial radiation. So there would be more absorption near the surface and relatively less absorption at greater heights. That is why with increase in height there is generally a fall in temperature in the first layer of the atmosphere, which is the troposphere. Do you understand that? Now, तो एक चीज हमको ये समझ में आ गई, that with increase in height there is fall in temperature, with increase in height there is fall in pressure. बस ये दो चीज हमको अभी यहां से आगे समझने के लिए चाहिए. क्या चीज? पहला, with increase in height, there is fall in pressure. Why? Because the atmosphere becomes more and more rarefied. And as it becomes more and more rarefied, its weight reduces successively. Why? Because the length of the air column keeps on reducing as you increase the height. So with increase in height, there is fall in pressure. And similarly, with increase in height, there is fall in temperature in the first layer of the atmosphere, which is troposphere. Okay, so ये हमको समझ में आना चाहिए. Now look here. Let's go back to what we already know, that if the surface is hot, you would have low pressure, and in areas of low pressure, air rises. Whereas if the surface is cold, you would have high pressure. Why? Because temperature and pressure are inversely related. So if it is hot, low pressure; if it is cold, high pressure. And over high pressure areas, air sinks. And air always blows from high pressure to low pressure. This is known as wind. This horizontal flow of air is also known as advectional movement. So this is known as advectional movement. Whereas this vertical movement of air is known as convectional movement. So air can move in two ways, either horizontally or vertically. Vertically it can rise or it can sink. This is known as convectional rise, or it is also known as convectional ascent. Whereas this where the air sinks is known as convectional descent or convectional sinking. Do you understand that? This is known as advectional movement. Advectional movement can also be of two types. They can be near the surface, they can be at upper air. Upper air means relatively at higher heights. When it is near the surface, you call them wind. When they happen at upper air level, you call them upper air advectional movements. Advection is always horizontal movement, whereas convectional movement is vertical movement, either rise or sink. Do you understand that? Now, keep this in mind, that till what height a hot air will rise? Air will rise till the time it is hotter than its surroundings. अगर कोई air parcel है, अगर वो उसके surrounding में जो air है उससे गर्म है, तभी वो rise करेगा और तब तक ही rise करेगा till the time it remains warm when compared to its surroundings. If it becomes colder when compared to the temperature of its surroundings, it will sink. So what am I saying? Like suppose this is the air parcel and its temperature is 20 degree and the surrounding air's temperature is 10 degree. Then this air parcel is warmer than its surroundings. If it is warmer than its surrounding, then definitely its volume would be more and therefore its density would be less, its weight would be less, it would be relatively lesser weight, so it would rise. तो गर्म हवा तब तक ऊपर जाती है जब तक वो अपने चारों तरफ की हवा से गर्म रहे. The moment this air, the rising warm air, it becomes cooler than its surroundings, it sinks, because cooler means it is relatively denser and relatively denser means more weight and more weight means there would be sinking. So a warm air rises till the time it is warmer than its surroundings. The air parcel, if it becomes colder than its surroundings, it sinks. तो warm रहने, जब तक warm रहता है तब तक rise होता है, जैसे cold हो जाता है sink होता है. But there can be situation also when the air parcel's temperature is same as that of its surroundings. Then what happens? If that is the situation, it does not rises because it is not warmer than its surroundings. It does not sink because it is not colder than its surroundings. Rather, it is of same temperature of its surrounding. When that happens, the air spreads. And this spreading at upper level is nothing but the upper level advection. Do you understand that? To understand this, look here. This is what I'm saying, that if you have a hot surface, you would have low pressure, and if the air comes in contact with this hot surface, it would rise, but it would keep on rising till the time it is warmer than its surroundings. If it becomes of same temperature as of its surroundings, it would stop rising, rather it would spread. It would spread in all directions, but I cannot show it because this is a 2D kind of surface. So you can understand that this is the best I can show, that it is spreading in all directions. Do you understand that? And you know that why does the warm air becomes cold as it rises? Why? Because as the air rises, the atmospheric pressure over it drops. As the pressure drops, there is further expansion of the air column. सोच कर देखो, suppose you have a spring. If I put pressure over it, this is what would happen to the spring. It means its volume would decrease. But if I remove the pressure, what would happen? There would be expansion in the spring. And we know that with increase in height, there is drop in atmospheric pressure. Why? Because the length of the air column, it successively reduces as you increase the height. We know that. So, as the air rises, the atmospheric pressure over it drops. और अगर आप pressure release करोगे तो क्या होगा? Expansion होगा. So it expands further. As it expands further, the intermolecular distances, they increase further. And as the intermolecular distances increase further, you can understand it expands further. तो जैसे ही air column ऊपर उठता है थोड़ा भी गर्म होकर, first it got heat from the surface, it became warm, it expanded, its relative density fell, its weight fell, so it rose. As it rose, the air pressure further reduces, so it expands further and it rises again. As it rises, the air pressure further drops, it expands further and rises again. And if that keeps on happening, you can understand that the air parcel becomes successively cool as well with every rise. Why? Because think of this. Suppose you are eating a chapati and the chapati is very hot. रोटी है, बहुत गर्म रोटी है. तो इसको ठंडा करने के लिए आप क्या करते हो? You just tear it away. You just tear it away. As you tear it away, you increase the molecular distances. And so now the molecules can lose heat in and around them. But if they are closely packed, then they would become very hot. Like if this is a hot chapati and if you can just do this to it, it means you reduce its volume, it would become further hot. But to cool it down, you increase the intermolecular distance by tearing it away. Similarly, as the rising air expands due to fall in atmospheric pressure, you can understand that it happens almost, it does to it almost the same effect. It means the intermolecular distances further increases and this cools down the rising air. अगर आपको ये समझने में थोड़ा मुश्किल हो रहा है तो ऐसे सोच कर देखिए. The air from here, it rises because of the energy. And what is the energy? Heat energy. And as it moves, it will lose the energy. Because no movement is possible without losing energy. आप एक race लगा लो. After that you stop and you see you would be losing a lot of energy. So if that is true with you, that is also true with the air column. So if the air column rises, you can understand that the heat energy that it has, it will lose that heat energy as well. This loss of heat is known as adiabatic cooling. Adiabatic cooling is the cooling of the air parcel as it rises. Do you understand this? As it rises, it cools. So you can understand that this air parcel will keep on rising till the time it is warmer than its surroundings, and with every rise, it will cool. So there will come a time when its temperature is similar to that of its environment, and at that point, it will stop rising. Do you understand that? and from there it would spread in all directions. But even in spreading, there is some movement involved, and every movement includes loss of heat. So there would be further loss of heat, and the air parcel would become cool. As the air parcel cools down, you know that it shrinks. As it shrinks, then its density increases, and as density increases, its weight increases, so it starts sinking. Do you understand that? And wherever air sinks, it creates high pressure area, and air always blows from high pressure to low pressure. So look here one more time. यहीं पर है सब कुछ जो आपको समझना चाहिए ऑप्शनल के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से. What I'm saying is, there is a hot surface and air came in contact with the hot surface. It expanded and it rose. As it rose, the air pressure decreased over it, so it further expanded and it rose. As it rose further, the air pressure further decreased, so it expanded again and it kept rose. As with every expansion, there was loss of heat. Why? Because if you keep on tearing this chapati away, then there would be more loss of heat. It means you are making the molecular distances much more with every tearing away. Similarly, as the air parcel, जो समझ लो surface के पास इतना है, as it rises, expands, then it expands further. So the intermolecular distances, they keep on increasing. As they keep on increasing, the molecules lose heat quickly to their immediate surrounding. And if that happens, this air parcel cools. And you know, anything that cools shrinks. And as it shrinks, its density increases. As its density increases, it sinks. And the point over the surface of the earth where it sinks, it creates high pressure zone. And air always blows from high pressure to low pressure. So let's revise जो मैंने कहा है अब तक. What I'm saying is that with increase in height, there is decrease in pressure. Why does that happen? Because the atmosphere becomes more and more rarefied. Because atmosphere is held together to the earth because of earth's gravity. And the gravity is maximum near the surface of the earth. So the number of molecules of atmosphere are also maximum near the surface of the earth. So as you increase the height, the number of molecules, they decrease, and therefore the air becomes more and more rarefied. Or you can think it like this way, that air pressure is the weight exerted by a unit column of air when drawn from the surface to the top of the atmosphere. As you increase the height, the length of this column reduces, hence the overall weight exerted by this column also reduces, and pressure is nothing but the weight exerted by the air column. So atmospheric pressure falls with increase in height. I have also told you that in the troposphere, which is the lowest layer of the atmosphere, with increase in height, the temperature also drops. Why does that happen? Because the lower atmosphere has greater concentration of greenhouse gases. जब सारे gases molecules के concentration ज़्यादा है near surface, तो greenhouse gases का भी होगा. If there is more concentration of greenhouse gases near the surface of the earth, there is more trapping of heat. Why? Because the greenhouse gases are transparent, almost transparent to the incoming solar radiation or the insolation, but they are opaque or they trap the outgoing terrestrial radiation. जब ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस का कॉन्सेंट्रेशन बढ़ जाता है लोअर एटमॉस्फेयर में, तो एटमॉस्फेयर बहुत गर्म होने लगता है. दैट इज व्हाट इज नोन एज ग्लोबल वार्मिंग और द क्लाइमेट चेंज दैट वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट. एनीहाउ, तो दो चीजें तो समझ में आ गई वेरी क्लियरली, दैट विद इंक्रीज इन हाइट देयर इज फॉल इन प्रेशर, विद इंक्रीज इन हाइट देयर इज फॉल इन टेम्परेचर इन द फर्स्ट लेयर. ऊपर के लेयर्स में हो सकता है कुछ और अरेंजमेंट हो. वी आर नॉट बॉदर्ड अबाउट दैट टुडे. As we are discussing general circulation of atmosphere, we will keep ourselves only to the lower layer. In the lower layer, with the increase in height, there is fall in temperature. Now, the air keeps on rising till the time it is warmer than its environment. The time when it becomes same in temperature as that of its environment, it spreads. It neither rises nor sinks. But as it spreads, it cools further. As it cools, because every movement requires some loss of heat, so it cools further. As it cools further, there comes a point when it becomes cooler than its surrounding. Or if it is warmer than its surrounding, it rises. If it becomes cooler than its surroundings, it would sink. So it starts sinking. As it sinks, the point where it sinks, it creates a high pressure or a area of accumulation of air. And from that area to the area of deficit, you have movement of air, horizontal movement of air, and this is known as advectional movement of air near the surface, which is known as wind. Whereas this is advectional movement at the upper layers of the atmosphere, and this is known as the upper air advectional movement. Do you understand this? So let us now try to have an understanding about the forces that affect air movement. So let's have a look at the forces that affect wind movement, or when wind blows or air blows from high pressure to low pressure, how or what are the forces that affect such movement of air. Now, there are three forces. The first one is the pressure gradient force, also known as the PGF, pressure gradient force. The second one is an interesting force, and it is known as the Coriolis force. The third one is known as the frictional force. Let us try to understand these three forces one by one. Pressure gradient force, or simply put, it is the force which is generated due to the gradient or slope of the pressure. Now think of this. Suppose you have a slope. A slope is nothing but a gradient. Gradient is actually the angle of this slope. Suppose you have a slope like this. So can I say that this is the low end of the slope and this is the high end of the slope? Suppose I drop some water here. Will the water go like this? Will it climb the slope? No, it will never. But if I drop water here, can I say that the water will flow from the high end to the low end of the slope? Can I say so? Yes. It means, again, this strengthens our thought that flow always take from high to low. So pressure gradient is, this is the gradient of a slope. So this is the slope gradient. Similarly, pressure can also have a gradient. And what is the pressure gradient? You have high pressure areas and you have low pressure areas. Clear? And I can say that air always blows from high pressure area to low pressure area, because any flow, if it is true with respect to flow of water, it is also true with respect to flow of air. Any flow always takes place from high to low. That is something that you need to keep in mind. Suppose I have a low pressure on this side as well. So here also you can understand there would be flow of air from high to low. And you know that from low pressure air rises and over high pressure air sinks. And the rise of air takes place till the time it is warmer than its environment. When it becomes equal in temperature to its environment, it spreads. And when it becomes cooler than its environment, it starts sinking. So the surface advection, the upper air advection, the convectional sinking and the convectional rise, they completely make a cell. Can you see? This is almost like a complete circuit. This makes a cell. Such cells are known as convective cells. I'm repeating again. आपको ये पता है that air always flows from high to low, and this happens because of the gradient of the pressure, and this gradient which engenders or creates the flow of air is known as the pressure gradient force. जहां पे भी हाई प्रेशर होगा वहां पे एक्यूमुलेशन ऑफ एयर होगा, जहां पे भी लो प्रेशर होगा वहां पे डेफिसिट ऑफ एयर होगा. एंड एयर ऑलवेज फ्लोज फ्रॉम हाई प्रेशर टू लो प्रेशर बिकॉज ऑल फ्लोज टेक प्लेस फ्रॉम हाई टू लो. That can be proved with respect to this slope and flow of water over it as well. And you know that over low pressure air rises and over high pressure air sinks and air flows from high pressure to low pressure. This is surface flow, this is upper air flow, this is convectional sinking, this is convectional rise. Together they make the convective cell. It's almost like a closed circuit. तो ये ऐसे हो रहा है. समझ लो, this is the low pressure, my right hand is low pressure, my left hand is high pressure. So air flows like this, then it rises because over low pressure air rises and it spreads as it becomes equal in temperature to its surroundings, and when it becomes colder than its surroundings it sinks, and wherever it sinks it becomes high pressure. So that's why the movement of air, vertical and horizontal, upper air and surface, rise and sink, completes and makes a cell. Such a cell is known as convective cell. तो ये एक चीज तो हमको क्लियर हो गई. अच्छा, इसमें हमें एक चीज और ध्यान में रखनी चाहिए. If you think, suppose there is a high pressure on this side as well, and you know that air always flows from high pressure to low pressure, and you can understand that as air spreads and when it becomes cooler than its environment it sinks, and wherever it sinks it creates a high pressure. If you look at here, can you see that there is convergence of air from both sides? It means air is trying to meet here. So this becomes a zone of convergence, because if this is wind 1, if this is wind 2, wind 1 and wind 2 are trying to meet here, and that's why they are trying to converge here. That's why low pressure areas are known as zones of convergence. So they are not only zones of rarefication because of rise of air, there is kind of vacuum, they are also zones of convergence. समझ लो यहाँ एक और low pressure है. So you can understand that air blows from high pressure to low pressure, over low pressure air rises and it spreads. As it becomes cooler it sinks. We can make as many convective cells as we can. What I'm trying to say is, if you look at high pressure and this is wind 2 and if this is wind 3, you can understand that from here air is diverging, whereas here air is converging, and here air is diverging. So high pressure areas are actually zones of divergence. तो एक चीज तो बहुत क्लियर हो गई कि कोई ऐसा एरिया जहां पे एयर राइज हो रहा होगा वहां पे कन्वर्जेंस भी हो रहा होगा एयर का. Keep this in mind. The rising takes vertically, but the convergence takes place horizontally. The divergence also takes place horizontally, but the sinking takes place vertically. Obviously बात है कि अगर एयर ऐसे नीचे आ रहा है सरफेस से टकरा के तो वो सिर्फ स्प्रेड ही होगा, और सरफेस का एयर वहां पर कन्वर्ज होगा जहां से एयर राइज हो रहा है, क्योंकि वहां पे तो वैक्यूम बन रहा है. तो इसलिए उस वैक्यूम को फिल करने के लिए एयर विल कम फ्रॉम ऑल डायरेक्शंस टू फिल दैट एरिया. तो एक चीज हम इससे कंक्लूड कर सकते हैं, एंड व्हाट इज दैट कंक्लूजन? दैट जोन्स ऑफ कन्वर्जेंस विल बी लो प्रेशर एरियाज, whereas zones of divergence would be high pressure areas. We can also conclude one thing, that zones where air is rising would be low pressure area, and zones where air is sinking would be high pressure area. और आप एक चीज देखो ध्यान से, this is at the surface level, but अगर आप upper level पे देखोगे, at this level, it means surface पे high pressure area है, और अगर आप उसके ही ऊपर देखोगे तो you will see this is a zone of convergence, because winds are converging here, upper air winds, these are not surface winds. Similarly, अगर यहाँ पे ground पे low pressure है, इसके just ऊपर अगर आप देखोगे upper air पे, you will see that wind is diverging. और आपको पता है that whenever there is divergence, it becomes a high pressure area, and wherever it is convergence, it becomes a low pressure area. So it's almost something like this. Suppose this is high pressure, that's low pressure, it's high pressure and it's low pressure again. So from here you can understand air is rising, here air is sinking, here air is rising, sinking, and here air is rising. And wind blows from high pressure to low pressure. And you can understand this is what is the upper air situation is. तो आप यहाँ पर देखो हाई प्रेशर जो ग्राउंड पे है उसके जस्ट ऊपर अपर एयर में क्या होगा? एयर इज कन्वर्जिंग बिकॉज दैट इज हाउ द कन्वेक्टिव सेल इज बिल्ट. और जहां पे भी कन्वर्जेंस होगा वहां पे तो लो प्रेशर होगा, हमने अभी देखा है. और जहां पे भी डाइवर्जेंस होगा वहां पे हाई प्रेशर होगा. तो यहां पे लो प्रेशर बन जाएगा, यहां पे हाई प्रेशर बन जाएगा. तो इससे क्या लर्न किया हमने ये लर्न किया कि दो हाई प्रेशर और दो लो प्रेशर मिलके एक कन्वेक्टिव सेल बना देते हैं. फर्दर वी लर्न दिस दैट एवरी लो प्रेशर ऑन ग्राउंड हैज एन हाई प्रेशर अपर एयर काउंटरपार्ट and every high pressure on ground has an upper air low pressure counterpart. Clear? So इससे हमें समझ में आ गया role of pressure gradient force. Let us now come to this force, Coriolis force. Coriolis force is a modifying force of wind. Due to Coriolis force, the winds that are blowing in the northern hemisphere, they turn towards their right, and winds that are blowing in the southern hemisphere, they turn towards their left. Suppose ये एक high pressure है और यहाँ पे low pressure है. So wind should blow like this from high pressure to low pressure. लेकिन अगर हम northern hemisphere में हैं तो ये movement ऐसा हो जाता है. It turns towards its right. Whereas if we are in the southern hemisphere, ये movement ऐसा हो जाता है. It turns towards its left. Actually, there is no turning, but just the effect of it. And this happens because of the rotation of the earth on its axis from west to east. और यही अगर हम समझ लिए, then we will understand what is the meaning of Coriolis force. So let's have a look at that as well. So let's have a look at the Coriolis force. But to understand Coriolis force, we must understand how the earth rotates. Well, the earth rotates from west to east. This is west and this is east. So the earth rotates from west to east on its axis and revolves around the sun. But अगर आप इस rotation को north pole के point of view से देखोगे, so it is a anti-clockwise rotation. जैसे घड़ी चलती है, just उसका उल्टा है. That's why we are calling it an anti-clockwise rotation. And when you see it from the southern hemisphere, it's a clockwise rotation. Some books might write that earth rotates in a clockwise fashion or an anti-clockwise fashion. These are not correct statements. Correct statement is earth rotates from west to east, but when you see it from the north pole's perspective, it is counterclockwise. When you see it from the south pole's perspective, it is clockwise. Clear? अब चलो ये अंडरस्टैंडिंग के साथ let us try to understand the Coriolis force. Coriolis force is a force because of which in the northern hemisphere things turn towards their right, any moving thing including wind, and in the southern hemisphere things turn towards their left, any moving thing including wind. अब ये क्यों होता है? Remember that when we look at the rotation of the earth from the northern hemisphere's perspective, it is counterclockwise or anti-clockwise. Whereas when we look at the rotation, this is from the northern hemisphere's point of view, when we look at the rotation from the southern hemisphere's point of view, it is clockwise. यही रीजन है जिसकी वजह से कोई भी चीज जो नॉर्दर्न हेमिस्फीयर में मूव कर रही है, it turn towards its right, and whatever is moving in the southern hemisphere including winds, ocean currents etc, they turn towards their left. पर ये होता कैसे है? चलो देख लेते हैं. इसको समझने के लिए let us assume an example. Suppose there is a rotating disk. जैसे आपने बचपन में पार्क्स में देखा होगा मेरी गो राउंड होता है जो, वैसा ही है समझ लो कुछ. That's a huge disk which is rotating, and the direction of rotation is counterclockwise. So the disk is rotating like this, in this fashion. It means there is a counterclockwise rotation. This would be a clockwise rotation. So there is a counterclockwise rotation. समझ लो एक बहुत बड़ा डिस्क है जो घूम रहा है, and I am showing you the top view of the disk. ये आप टॉप से देख रहे हो उस डिस्क को जो घूम रहा है इस तरीके से. Suppose this is the center point of the disk. Clear? Now imagine that there are two friends A and B who are standing over this disk, and their positions are like this. This is A's position and this is where is B. So I can connect A and B along an axis. This is B's position, this is A's position, and the disk is rotating in a counterclockwise fashion, and this is the center of the disk. Clear? Now A and B are not moving over the disk, they are just standing over the disk. The disk is rotating. It means their relative position never changes with respect to each other. Clear? It means they remain in an axis throughout the rotation, क्योंकि वो नहीं दौड़ रहे हैं अपनी जगह पर, वो तो सिर्फ खड़े हैं. The disk is rotating. तो अगर उनका ये axis position है, वो कहीं पर भी हो, वो इसी axis पे ही रहते हैं अपने, मतलब उनके relative positions नहीं change होते, because they are not moving, just standing. Now what happens is A tries to throw a ball to B. Let me show you the ball with a different color. Suppose A tries to throw a ball to B in this direction. This is what he is attempting, is throwing the ball to B. But by the time the ball reaches B, the disk has rotated, and this is where A is now. Because the disk has rotated, A was throwing the ball to the B, and A threw the ball to the B, but before the ball could reach B, A's new position is this, because the disk has rotated. And because B is also standing still, you can understand, and because A's and B's position, axial position do not change, B का भी नया position यहाँ पर है अब. Can you understand this? So try to understand this. A ने एक ball फेंकने की कोशिश की B की तरफ. This is B's initial position, this is A's initial position, but before the ball reaches, A has come here and B has come here, because the disk has rotated. It is a continuously rotating disk in an anti-clockwise fashion. यहाँ पर एक concept आता है simple physics का, which is known as angular velocity. And angular velocity is कि समझ लो मेरे हाथ में I have this marker, and if I run in this fashion and I throw this marker will carry the momentum of my body also. Or in simple words, I can say that as A is throwing the ball to the B, the ball will also rotate like A, because ball will carry the momentum of A, and A is rotating. So the ball will also not go like this, but it will go like this. It will travel the same distance as A has traveled in that time, because the ball is carrying the angular momentum and angular velocity of A. जिनको angular velocity या angular momentum का concept नहीं समझ में आ रहा है, वो ये सोच सकते हैं कि ये बॉल जब A ने अपने हाथ में पकड़ा था, तो A जैसे मूव कर रहा था, बॉल भी वैसे ही मूव कर रहा था क्योंकि हाथ में था. जब A बॉल को फेंक देगा और A इस तरफ मूव कर जाएगा, बॉल भी उस A के मूवमेंट को कैरी करेगा, और वो भी उतना ही मूव करेगा आगे जाके जितना A ने मूव किया है, क्योंकि वो दोनों एक साथ थे एक टाइम पे. तो अगर आप थ्रो करोगे तो आप देखोगे कि वो भी उतना ही डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल करेगा आगे जाके बॉल जितना A ने ट्रैवल कर लिया है इस तरफ. इट मींस अगर आप यहां पर देखोगे कि A ने जो डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल किया है वो इतना है, तो ये बॉल जो है ये भी इतना ही डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल करेगा जितना A ने ट्रैवल किया है, उतना ये भी ट्रैवल करेगा. तो ये बॉल की जो पोजीशन होगी, जब ए यहां पर होगा तो बॉल की पोजीशन यहां होगी. डू यू अंडरस्टैंड दैट? और ऐसा क्यों हुआ? बिकॉज ऑफ एंगुलर वेलोसिटी, क्योंकि बॉल कैरीड द मोमेंटम ऑफ ए. अगर आप दौड़ते दौड़ते अगर आपको यकीन नहीं हो रहा है ये कैसे हो रहा है, तो एक काम करिएगा, एक बॉल लीजिएगा एंड यू रन, एंड एज यू रन यू ट्राई टू थ्रो इट. You will see that whatever distance you have traveled from the point of throw, the ball will also travel the same distance ahead of you because it is carrying your momentum with it. Do you understand that? But A तो यहां पर है अब और B यहां पर. This is new position of B and this is new position of A. तो A को लगेगा कि मैंने तो B की तरफ बॉल फेंका था सीधा. But when you look at from A's perspective, the ball would be here. तो ए को ऐसा लगेगा कि मैंने बी की तरफ बॉल फेंका था लेकिन बॉल यहां चला गया. इट मींस द बॉल हैज टर्न टुवर्ड्स इट्स राइट. दिस इज द मोशन ऑफ द बॉल, दिस इज द राइट ऑफ द बॉल, दिस इज द लेफ्ट ऑफ द बॉल. बॉल हैज टर्न टुवर्ड्स इट्स राइट. Actually, nothing has happened. Only thing that has happened is the ball has carried the momentum of A. Do you understand this? अगर A यहां से समझ लो यहां पर आ गया यूनिट टाइम में, then this would be the new position of B. तो जो बॉल है वो भी इतना ही डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल करेगा. It means it would be somewhere here. This would be the ball. And in this case also A would feel that I have thrown the ball in this direction, but the ball is now here. It has turned towards its right. This is the original path, but it has turned towards its right. यहां से यहां तक आने में अगर समझ लो 1 मिनट लगता है ए को, और यहां से यहां आने में भी समझ लो ए को 1 मिनट लगता है. दिस केस 1 कि 1 मिनट में यहां तक आता है, और केस 2 ये है कि 1 मिनट में यहां तक आता है. यू सी व्हेन ग्रेटर डिस्टेंस इज ट्रैवल्ड देन द डिफ्लेक्शन इज ऑल्सो मोर. इट मींस फास्टर द मूवमेंट, फास्टर इज द डिफ्लेक्शन, और ग्रेटर इज द डिफ्लेक्शन. डू यू अंडरस्टैंड दैट? एंड व्हाई इज दिस हैपनिंग? This is happening because of this rotating disk. Do you understand that? कुछ भी नहीं हुआ है एक्चुअली, बस इस डिस्क की रोटेशन की वजह से ऐसा फीलिंग आ रहा है कि जो बॉल है उसने अपना पाथ चेंज कर लिया हो, बट एक्चुअली बॉल ने तो सिर्फ ए के मोमेंटम को कैरी किया है आगे. और यू नो दैट अगर काउंटर क्लॉकवाइज में राइट डिफ्लेक्शन हो रहा है, and we know that when we look at the earth from the north pole's perspective, there is counterclockwise movement, and counterclockwise movement therefore give you a right deflection. If this is true with the ball, this would be also true with moving wind. So moving wind in the northern hemisphere moves towards its right. अच्छा चलो यही चीज हम southern hemisphere में देख लेते हैं. So imagine the same thing. और एक चीज आपको और ध्यान रखनी पड़ेगी, दैट फास्टर द मूवमेंट, अगर जितनी फास्ट ये डिस्क रोटेट करेगी उतना ज्यादा डिफ्लेक्शन होगा, क्योंकि फास्ट होगा मतलब 1 मिनट में समझ लो यहां तक आ रहा है, तो ये फास्ट रोटेशन हुआ. 1 मिनट में यहां तक मतलब स्लो रोटेशन हुआ. ज्यादा फास्ट रोटेशन होगा तो डिफ्लेक्शन भी देखो ज्यादा है. यहां पे डिफ्लेक्शन देखो ए और बी, यहां पे डिफ्लेक्शन थोड़ा सा ही हुआ है, बट यहां पे बी से कितना दूर चला गया बॉल. सो इट मींस फास्टर द रोटेशन, ग्रेटर इज द डिफ्लेक्शन. Do you understand that? Southern hemisphere में ऐसे सोच लो that in the southern hemisphere things are moving in a clockwise fashion. It means this is the kind of rotation. और वही same example ले लेते हैं. Suppose there is a friend A and there is a friend B and they maintain their axis position all the time. और ये clockwise है तो after 1 minute suppose A की नई पोजीशन है, वो समझ लो सपोज दिस इज बी, ए की नई पोजीशन यहां है एंड बी की नई पोजीशन यहां है. सो सपोज ए ट्राई टू थ्रो अ बॉल वन मोर टाइम टू बी, बट एज द बॉल विल कैरी द मोमेंटम ऑफ ए, ball will also travel the same distance that A has traveled. So the ball would travel the same distance and this would be the new position of ball. यहां पर A की पोजीशन है, यहां पर B की पोजीशन है, और ये बॉल की पोजीशन है, अब नए बॉल की पोजीशन। क्यों? क्योंकि बॉल ने भी वही मोमेंटम कैरी किया है जो ए के पास है, बिकॉज दैट इज द रूल ऑफ एंगुलर मोमेंटम, कि अगर आप कोई दौड़ते हुए कोई भी चीज फेंकोगे तो वो आपके बॉडी की तरह ही मूव करेगा। जहां से आप फेंकोगे उसको, वहां से आप जितना दूर जाओगे उस स्पीड से, वो भी जो भी चीज आप फेंकोगे वो भी उतना ही ट्रैवल करेगी आगे। अब देखो, अगर हम ए के पर्सपेक्टिव से देखें तो ए को लगेगा कि मैंने तो बॉल फेंका था बी की तरफ, बट बॉल हैज मूव्ड टू इट्स लेफ्ट। बॉल ऐसे जाना चाहिए था ए से बी की तरफ, लेकिन बॉल ऐसे चला गया, विच इज a movement towards the left. This is the movement towards the right, this is movement towards the left. So when the disc is rotating clockwise, there is leftward turning of the ball. When the disc is rotating counterclockwise, there is rightward turning of the ball. Do you understand this? This is the Coriolis force. Coriolis force कोई फोर्स नहीं है, ये एक apparent effect है जो कि अर्थ की रोटेशन की वजह से होता है। एंड आई एम रिपीटिंग वन मोर टाइम दैट बिकॉज ऑफ द रोटेशन ऑफ द अर्थ इन अ काउंटर क्लॉकवाइज डायरेक्शन फ्रॉम द नॉर्थ पोल्स पर्सपेक्टिव, थिंग्स मूविंग इन द नॉर्दर्न हेमिस्फीयर, बी इट ओशन करेंट्स, winds, anything, they turn towards their right. Actually, they do not turn towards their right. It gives an effect as if they are turning towards their right. They just maintain the momentum of the body. Do you understand this? From where they have originated, that portion, that point. And in the southern hemisphere you would see that they turn towards their left. Clear? और ऐसा क्यों होता है? Because in the southern hemisphere the impact is clockwise, whereas in the northern hemisphere the rotation is anti-clockwise. So you can understand this, that as the earth rotates from west to east, this is what we know, that earth rotates from west to east. अगर हम नॉर्दर्न हेमिस्फीयर में हैं, सो इट वुड बी अ राइटवर्ड टर्न, whereas if we are in southern hemisphere it would be a leftward turn. That is known as the Coriolis force, and this rightward turn in the northern hemisphere and leftward turn in the southern hemisphere is known as the Ferrule's law. The Ferrule's law is a law which tells us that in the northern hemisphere winds will turn towards the right, whereas in the southern hemisphere winds would turn towards the left. तो एक बार हम इसको देख लेते हैं। समझ लो, we are in the northern hemisphere and this is a high pressure area and this is a low pressure area. So wind should go like this from high pressure to low pressure. But if we are in the northern hemisphere, it will turn towards its right. कैसे भी हो, कहीं पर भी हो, if this is high pressure and this is low pressure, wind should come like this from high pressure to low pressure. But if we are in the northern hemisphere, wind would turn towards its right. ये इसका right होगा. This is the moving wind, this is wind's right, this is wind's left, so it will turn towards its right. If we are in the southern hemisphere and suppose we are in the southern hemisphere and suppose this is high pressure and this is low pressure, or in any direction think of this as high pressure, this as low pressure, wind rather than coming like this would turn towards its left, the same thing. Can you understand this? और यहाँ पर भी, if you're thinking like this is high pressure, this is low pressure, instead of going like this, it would turn towards its left. This is nothing but the Coriolis effect, also known as the Ferrule's law effect, after the name of the man who identified this force. This is the second force that affect wind movement. The third force that affect wind movement is the frictional force. Now what is with respect to the frictional force? You see that frictional force is nothing but the drag force or the resistance which is created by the ground as the air is moving. अगर समझ लो एक स्मूथ सरफेस है, उसके ऊपर अगर एयर मूव करेगा, there would be less friction. But if there are mountains and valleys and all of that, you can understand there would be a lot of friction. Suppose this is the surface and wind is moving over it like this, there would be less friction. Whereas if this is the surface, suppose this is how the surface is, and you know the earth's surface can be uneven, you can understand that there would be a lot of obstruction and lot of friction. friction can reduce the velocity or speed of the moving wind. Friction can also change the direction of the moving wind. Suppose एक mountain आ गया ऐसे, and if the wind is blowing like this, it can go like this now. So there is change in direction as well of the wind. Why? Because of the obstruction of the natural or man-made feature. जैसे buildings भी हो सकती हैं, they can also obstruct the air. Now you tell me one thing, that if I have surface air and upper air, suppose this is surface air, which is wind, this is upper air wind, where the friction would be more? Obviously it would be near the surface, because near the surface you would have more mountains, more buildings and all those kind of things. But at the upper air there is no such thing. That's why upper air wind is very fast, because there is no frictional loss of speed. There is no resistance or drag that causes the wind to lose speed. Therefore, the upper air winds are very fast when compared to these surface winds. So these are the three forces: the pressure gradient force, the Coriolis force and the frictional force, that are responsible for the change in direction or speed of the wind. But keep one thing in mind, that the Coriolis force does not affect the velocity of the wind. It just has an impact on the direction of the wind. And what is the direction? How does it impact direction? In the northern hemisphere, every moving thing turns towards its right, and in the southern hemisphere every moving thing turns towards its left. And how do we understand that? We understand that with the help of this rotating disc example in the counterclockwise and clockwise fashion. Now we are armed with all the basic understanding which will enable us to understand the general circulation of the atmosphere. Let's have a look at that. Let's have a look now at the general circulation of the atmosphere. For that, let us try to understand this. Suppose this is our Earth, and this is where is the equator, and this is our North Pole, and this is the South Pole. Now you know that as we move from equator towards the poles, there is a fall in temperature across the surface. Kyun? Because at the equator you have very warm areas, hot areas, और poles पे जाओगे तो you will find ice. Arctic, Antarctica, ये कैसे जगहें हैं? They are all covered with glaciers, and glaciers can form only when the temperature is very low. And you know that if the surface temperature is high, then there would be low pressure conditions. And if the surface temperature is low or ice-like conditions here, you would have high pressure near the poles. So near the equator you have low pressure area, whereas near the poles you have high pressure area. और हमको इतना भी पता है that from low pressure air rises and over high pressure air sinks. देखो कितना आसान हो गया अब ये समझना, that over the poles अगर आप जाकर खड़े होते हो तो air will sink over your head, but at the equator you will feel as if the air is rising. Why? Because hot areas have low pressure, and over low pressures the air rise. Cold areas have high pressure, and over high pressure air sinks. Do you understand that? And if that happens throughout the equator, because at every portion of the equator, suppose this is equator, at every portion air is rising throughout the equator, and if that is the case, then all along the equator you would have a belt of low pressure. Throughout the equator you have a belt of low pressure, and this is known as the equatorial low pressure belt. Clear? Now you know air keeps on rising only till the height it remains warmer than its surroundings. जैसे ही इसका टेम्परेचर इसके सराउंडिंग जितना हो जाएगा it will spread, and when it becomes cooler than its surroundings it would sink. Suppose it is sinking around this equator's location is say 0 degree and the low pressure belt. अगर ये belt है एक तो इसका एक टॉप कॉर्नर होगा और इसका एक बॉटम कॉर्नर होगा, या आप ये बोल सकते हो दैट इसका एक नॉर्दर्न एंड होगा एक सदर्न एंड होगा, तभी तो ये बेल्ट होगा, नहीं तो फिर तो एक लाइन हो गई बस. सो इफ यू आर कॉलिंग इट एज अ बेल्ट, सपोज द अपर पार्ट ऑफ द बेल्ट लाइज एट 5 डिग्री नॉर्थ and the lower part as 5 degrees south. So what am I saying? That from the equator air is rising, and after rising to a certain height it spreads and then it sinks, and it sinks suppose at 30 degree north and at this location which is 30 degrees south. And you know that if air is rising at the equator, it's spreading and it's sinking at 30 degree north and 30 degrees south. That is happening at every place north and south of the equator. So it means at 30 degree north and 30 degree south also we will have pressure belts. These pressure belts will be high pressure belts. Why it would be high pressure belt? Because wherever air sinks it creates high pressure, from wherever air rises creates low pressure. These high pressure belts are known as the subtropical high pressure belts. There would be two of them. I am calling them subtropical high, STH. So there would be two of them, subtropical high 30 degree north and subtropical high 30 degree south. अच्छा, अगर ये high pressure है और ये low pressure है, then you know that air always blows from high pressure to low pressure like this. But if we are in the northern hemisphere, you know that winds turn towards their right due to Coriolis. So instead of blowing like this, they would start blowing like this. And in the southern hemisphere, winds turn towards their left. So instead of blowing like this from high pressure, this is the high pressure belt and this is the low pressure belt. So from high pressure to low pressure, there is a pressure gradient. So you can understand that winds would blow from high pressure to low pressure. In the southern hemisphere, they would turn towards their left. In the northern hemisphere, they would turn towards their right. ये wind आ रही है इधर, ये wind की right है, ये wind का left है, ये wind का left है, ये wind की right है. So you can understand that southern hemisphere में ये left की तरफ मुड़ जाएंगे, northern hemisphere पे ये right की तरफ मुड़ जाएंगे, और ऐसा हर जगह होगा. You can understand this is what it is happening everywhere. These winds are known as trade winds. Now in geography, we name a wind from the direction it comes and not to the direction to which it goes. समझ लो, there is a wind which is blowing from west to east. We will call that wind as westerlies. We name the wind from the direction from which it comes and not to the direction to which it goes. अगर कोई wind north से south की तरफ आ रही है, तो we will call it northerly. अगर कोई wind south से north की तरफ जा रही है, so we will call it southerly. Something like that. Do you understand this? So, अगर आप यहाँ पे इन winds को देखो, तो you will understand that they are blowing from north east to south west. ऐसा है इनका direction. So they are known as north east trade winds. Similarly here, if you see here in this direction, they are blowing from southeast to northwest. Or in geography, we name a wind from the direction from which it blows. So we call them as southeast trade winds. अब बात यह है कि why are we calling them trade winds? Because in the olden days, all the commerce was over the sea and with the help of ships, and ships were sail ships which moved with the help of the winds, and these ships were mostly used for conducting trade. तो उस जमाने में winds की मदद से ही ships move करते थे. That's why we call them as trade winds, क्योंकि 30 डिग्री नॉर्थ और 30 डिग्री साउथ में ही आप देखोगे वर्ल्ड के सबसे ज्यादा पुराने एम्पायर्स बने हैं या सिविलाइजेशंस हुई हैं. Be it Indus Valley, Chinese civilization, Egyptian civilization, Mesopotamian civilization, Persian civilization, all lie more or less between this area. तो trade भी यहीं सबसे ज्यादा होता था, and these winds are known as trade winds because they helped in moving the sail ships which moved with the help of winds. अच्छा चलो यहां पर देख लेते हैं. At this point, what is happening at the equator? Look at this. Suppose this is the equatorial low pressure belt, and this is, you have the southeast trade and this is the northeast trade, and you know that low pressure areas are also known as zones of convergence because over low pressure, you know, air, or at low pressure air converge and air rises. So यहाँ पर air converge भी हो रहा है, but we know that because of, अगर ऐसे कन्वर्ज होना है एयर को, इफ वी आर इन नॉर्दर्न हेमिस्फीयर इट वुड टर्न टुवर्ड्स इट्स राइट ड्यू टू कोरियोलिस. ये हमने समझ लिया है, दैट हैपेंस ड्यू टू रोटेशन ऑफ द अर्थ. तो यहां सोचकर देखो दैट सपोज दिस इज द इक्वेटर 0 डिग्री, दिस इज 5 डिग्री नॉर्थ, दिस इज 5 डिग्री साउथ. द एयर इज ट्राइंग टू कन्वर्ज एट दिस पॉइंट, बट जब वो 5 डिग्री नॉर्थ और 5 डिग्री साउथ के पास आते हैं, द नॉर्थ ईस्ट ट्रेड्स एंड द साउथ ईस्ट ट्रेड्स, they become so hot that they rise. Why? Because the equatorial areas are hot areas. तो ये हो रहा है जैसे दो wind हैं, suppose these two winds, as they are trying to converge, before they could converge they become hot and they rise. So this area remains vacuum all the time, or this area is never filled by air. That's why the low pressure area continues here, क्योंकि अगर ये भर गया तो फिर तो low pressure खत्म. And why is that happening? Because as they move towards the equator, they become hotter and hotter, and by the time they reach 5 degree north in case of northern hemisphere and 5 degree south in case of southern hemisphere, they become hot enough and they rise. Do you understand this? So ऐसे सोच सकते हो आप कि एयर यहाँ पर आ रहा है, बट इससे पहले कि वो मिल पाए यहाँ पर वो इतना गर्म हो जाता है कि वो राइज कर जाता है. एंड यू नो दैट हॉट एयर राइजेस. व्हाई? बिकॉज द एक्सपेंशन ऑफ वॉल्यूम, फॉल इन डेंसिटी, वो सब कुछ आपने अभी तक समझ लिया है. एंड दिस इज अ जोन ऑफ कन्वर्जेंस, एंड दिस लाइज बिटवीन द ट्रॉपिक्स. दैट्स व्हाई दिस बेल्ट इज ऑल्सो नोन एज द इंटर ट्रॉपिकल कन्वर्जेंट जोन. मतलब यहां पर कन्वर्ज हो रहा है एयर. डू यू अंडरस्टैंड दैट? अच्छा, एक चीज आप ध्यान से देखें, दैट बिकॉज इट नेवर converges at this point, before reaching this point air becomes warm and it rises up. This area remains a zone of calmness, and this is known as the doldrums. The word doldrums in English means a zone of calmness where nothing moves. तो यहां पर क्योंकि एयर कभी पहुंच ही नहीं पा रहा है, तो ये एरिया तो एकदम काम एरिया होगा. इस एरिया को हम कहते हैं डोल्ड्रम, where nothing moves. But scientists or meteorologists have found a very weak wind which is blowing in the doldrums from west to east. बहुत हल्की सी wind है एक जो move कर रही है. And you know that in geography we name a wind from the direction from which it comes. So if it is moving from west to east, we will call it westerlies. And where it is moving? At the equator. So we call it equatorial westerlies. Clear? Now these equatorial westerlies play a good role in understanding the role of ocean currents. But anyhow, come back to this. So I'm saying अभी तक हमने तीन pressure belts देख लिए. First one is the equatorial low pressure belt. Then we have seen the subtropical high pressure belts north and south, and we have seen the polar high pressure belts at North Pole and South Pole. अच्छा, एक बात देखो कि if this is the high pressure and if air sinks over this, air will diverge in all sides. जब सिंक होगा इट विल स्प्रेड इन ऑल साइड्स. तो अगर यहाँ पर एयर सिंक हो रहा है, सपोज दिस इज व्हाट इज हैपनिंग, एयर इज राइजिंग फ्रॉम हियर, स्प्रेडिंग एंड इट इज सिंकिंग, इट वुड डाइवर्ज इन बोथ साइड्स. तो ये वाला साइड तो हमने देख लिया है. लेट अस ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस साइड, एंड हियर ऑल्सो एयर वुड डाइवर्ज इन दिस साइड. और ये भी हाई प्रेशर एरिया है, तो यहां पर भी आपको पता है दैट एज एयर वुड सिंक it would diverge, it would spread like this. So here also the air is diverging, it is moving in all sides. So here also the air is diverging. Now this air which is coming from 30° north, it is warm air, whereas this air which is coming from poles would be cold air. देखो ऐसा हो रहा है situation that at the equator the air is rising, it is spreading and it is sinking at 30° north. From 30°, air spreads not only towards the equator across the surface but also towards the poles. But at the poles also the air is sinking. As the air is sinking, air would move in this direction as well. Air would spread across the surface from the poles as well. But this air which is coming across the surface from the poles is cold air. But this air which is coming from 30° north towards the poles is relatively warm air. And let me tell you one thing, that warm air and cold air, when they meet, the warm air is forced to rise. Why? Because warmer things are lighter and lighter things rise. As simple as that. So look here. So यहाँ से जो air आ रहा है, let me use the red color to indicate that it is warm air. This air which is going in this direction, it is warm air. This is warm air. This is also warm air. And the air which is moving from here is cold air. This is cold air. Do you understand that? But if we are in the northern hemisphere, you know that the wind as it moves will turn towards its right. And this will also turn towards its right. Similarly, if we are in the southern hemisphere, the wind would turn towards its left, and this would also turn towards its left. This is cold air and this is relatively warm air, whereas these trade winds are hot air because they are near the tropics. So you have hot areas, warm areas and cold areas. Hot areas are lower latitude areas near the equator. Warm areas are mid latitude areas and cold areas are high latitude areas. So when cold air, suppose this is the cold air and this is the warm air, when they move towards each other, the warm air rises because it is lighter. So I am showing it one more time. It should go like this. ये पोल की तरफ से आ रहा है हवा जो ठंडी हवा है, और ये मिड लैटिट्यूड से जा रहा है सब ट्रॉपिकल हाई से जो रिलेटिवली वार्म है. कोरियोलिस की वजह से दोनों ही राइट साइड टर्न हो गए, बट एज दे वुड कोलाइड विथ ईच अदर, you know that the warm air would rise. This is what would happen, or if you want to see it like this, this is what would happen. The warm air would rise, and when cold air, suppose this is cold air and warm air meet each other, the warm air rises. This rise is known as the rise of the air along the warm front. Front is nothing but a boundary between two different kinds of air parcels. So look here. Imagine at about 60° north and at about 60° south, the warm air rises. Here also the warm air rises. Imagine it कि warm air और cold air आपस में टकराए, and warm air lighter है, so it rose, and this happened everywhere. And you know that the warm air, after rising till a certain height, it would spread again, and as it spreads, it would complete the convective cell on the left and on its right, or towards its south and north, or towards the mid latitude and towards the poles. Clear? Similarly, यहाँ पे भी वही होगा. After rising, the air would spread. So it would spread like this on this direction and in this direction. यही तो हमने देखा था कन्वेक्टिव सेल. अगर आप देखो कि ये 3 सेल्स हैं, and this is the first cell which is known as the Hadley cell. This cell is known as the Ferrule cell. Remember the Ferrule's law? And this cell is known as the polar cell. So we have 2 Hadley cells, 2 Ferrule cells, and 2 polar cells, each to the north and south of the equator. अच्छा, आपको ये भी पता है कि the point from where air rises, it is a low pressure area. 60 degree north and 60 degree south where air rises, because warm air converges with cold air and warm air being lighter rise, and wherever air rises it becomes low pressure. This point is known as the subpolar low pressure belt. Similarly, you have a subpolar low pressure belt 60 degree south and subpolar low pressure belt 60 degree north. So the third belt is the subpolar low pressure belt, and the fourth belt is the polar high pressure belt, which is here, the high pressure zones. These winds which blow between subtropical high and subpolar low, they are moving from southwest to northeast, so they should be called as southwesterlies. But just for the sake of naming, they have been called as westerlies. So these westerlies lie in the northern hemisphere as well as in the southern hemisphere. So you have got trade winds, you have got westerlies which are moving like this, and finally you have got another set of winds which lie between the subpolar low and the polar high. This is the polar high pressure belt, this is the polar high pressure belt. So these winds, they are known as polar easterlies, क्योंकि ये आ रहे हैं नॉर्थ ईस्ट से, ये आ रहे हैं साउथ ईस्ट से. बट हमने ऑलरेडी एक बार साउथ ईस्ट ट्रेड और नॉर्थ ईस्ट ट्रेड नाम रख दिया है. सो जस्ट टू अवॉइड कंफ्यूजन, वी आर कॉलिंग दीज सेट ऑफ विंड्स एज पोलर easterlies, whereas this set of winds are known as polar easterlies south, and these are polar easterlies north. Do you understand this? So in this way we can understand how is the general circulation of air takes place over the Earth's surface. It forms 3 cells, the Hadley cell, the Ferrule cell and the polar cell. It forms 7 pressure belts, and they are the equatorial low pressure belt which has a northern edge, a southern edge, and within it there is sense of calmness which is known as doldrums, but at times there is a weak wind blowing in it. It is known as equatorial westerlies. The subtropical high pressure belt north, subtropical high pressure belt south, 30 degree north and south. Subpolar low pressure belt north, subpolar low pressure belt south, 60 degree north and south. The polar high pressure belt 90 degree north, the polar high pressure belt 90 degree south. Clear? So these are the 7 pressure belts and the 3 sets of airs, planetary winds, that complete your global circulation or the general circulation of the atmosphere. I'm repeating it one more time very quickly जिससे कि आप ये समझ जाओ. Here the air rises, and as it rises it creates low pressure. It spreads, it sinks and creates high pressure at north and south. From here air diverges. As it diverges towards the equator, it turns towards its right and left in the northern and southern hemisphere respectively due to the Coriolis force. These are known as northeast trades, southeast trades, and where they meet is known as the intertropical convergence zone. Intertropical convergence zone is also known as the equatorial low pressure belt. Within the convergence zone, there is area where air never reaches due to hot temperature. The air becomes warm before that and it rises. So it creates a zone of calmness. This zone of calmness is known as the doldrums. Within the doldrums, a very weak wind blows from west to east. We call it the equatorial westerlies. Climatologists are still debating why this wind blows. और जैसे हम आगे बढ़ते हैं क्लाइमेटोलॉजी में और भी पढ़ते हैं कॉन्सेप्ट, तब हमें थोड़ा आइडिया मिलने लगता है कि ये इक्वेटोरियल विंड क्यों ब्लो होती है. बट एनी हाउ, एज इट स्प्रेड्स towards the poles in the northern hemisphere and in the southern hemisphere, it turns towards its right and left respectively due to the Ferrule's law, and these become westerlies. Now these westerlies come in contact with the polar easterlies, which are cold in nature, and the westerlies rise, and wherever air rises it creates low pressure area, and wherever air sinks over the poles it creates high pressure area. So you have westerlies, you have polar easterlies north and south, and combinedly they form the general circulation of the atmosphere. अब देखो, इसको कई बार ट्राइसेल्युलर मेरीडायोनल सर्कुलेशन भी बोलते हैं. व्हाई? बिकॉज दिस इज हैपनिंग एट ऑल द लॉन्गिट्यूड्स. हर लॉन्गिट्यूड पे होगा ये, एंड लॉन्गिट्यूड्स आर ऑल्सो नोन एज मेरिडियंस. लाइक लैटिट्यूड्स आर नोन एज पैरेलल्स, लॉन्गिट्यूड्स आर नोन एज मेरिडियंस. तो हर लॉन्गिट्यूड पे आप देखोगे दैट देयर इज फॉर्मेशन ऑफ 3 cells, the Hadley cell, the Ferrule cell, and the polar cell. Clear? That's why it is known as tricellular meridional model. वैसे तो 6 cells होते हैं, 3 north of equator, 3 south of equator, but because the names they are more or less the same thing, that's why sometimes it is known as tricellular meridional model. ध्यान से देखो, इक्वेटर पे राइज हो रहा है, सब ट्रॉपिकल हाई पे सिंक हो रहा है, सब पोलर पे फिर राइज हो रहा है, पोलर पे सिंक हो रहा है. तो यू हैव गॉट 3 convective cells. Clear? And that's why it is known as the tricellular model. And this happens at all the longitudes. हर जगह हो रहा है ये. And that's why it is known as tricellular meridional model. Meridian is the second name for longitude. अब इसमें कुछ interesting बातें हैं. Like if you look at the subtropical high pressure belt, so suppose this is subtropical high pressure belt 30 degree north. Here air is sinking. Why? Here air is sinking, and that's why it's a high pressure area. और आपको पता है high pressure में हमेशा air sink होता है. So in olden days what would happen is people will travel in ships, और जब ये subtropical high pressure belt के नीचे आते थे, they would feel a pressure of air over them, जिसकी वजह से इनके ships डूबने लगते थे. So in order to reduce the load of the ships, what people used to do is, in those times the most important article of trade was the horse, because horse could be used in war, horse could be used in trade, horse could be used as means of transportation, horse could also be used for recreation, for sports etc. सबसे कीमती चीज जो थी वो horse थी. So what people used to do, उनको ज्यादा प्रेशर लगता था अपने बोट पे, उनका बोट डूबने लगता था, तो they would throw the horses away into the ocean to reduce the weight of the ship, and the ship would rise. क्योंकि जैसे ही आप weight कम करते हो ship का, ship would rise. Though today this will sound very inhuman, but other things that they could throw included gold, food, fresh water, etc. Because ocean में आपको fresh water तो मिलेगा नहीं, तो वो horses को फेंक देते थे जिससे उनका लोड कम हो. और ये उनकी शिप डूबने क्यों लगती थी? क्योंकि सब ट्रॉपिकल हाई प्रेशर बेल्ट पे एयर सिंक होता है, जिसकी वजह से जो बोट है उसके ऊपर प्रेशर बढ़ेगा, क्योंकि जब एयर सिंक होगा इट वुड क्रिएट हाई प्रेशर, और हाई प्रेशर अगर होगा तो ऑब्वियसली यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड देयर वुड बी मोर फोर्स एंड द बोट विल स्टार्ट सिंकिंग. दैट्स व्हाई द सबट्रॉपिकल हाई प्रेशर बेल्ट 30 डिग्री नॉर्थ एंड 30 डिग्री साउथ आर आल्सो नोन एज हॉर्स लैटिट्यूड्स. ये उनका एक दूसरा नाम है. Do you understand that? So this is the tricellular meridional model. Now let us have a look at the question papers of 2019 to understand कि questions physical geography में कैसे आते हैं. तो चलो 2019 के question paper को geography paper 1 उसमें हम देख लेते हैं. जो part A होता है वो पूरा फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी होता है, विच इज़ 125 मार्क्स. तो हम देखते हैं कि ये क्वेश्चन आते कैसे हैं. लेट्स हैव अ लुक. अगर आप इस पे देखोगे तो यू विल अंडरस्टैंड वन थिंग, कि जो पहला क्वेश्चन है उसके 5 पार्ट्स होते हैं. एवरी पार्ट कैरीज 10 मार्क्स. और अगर आप वैसे देखो तो हर पार्ट एक यूनिट से होता है। फर्स्ट पेपर के पार्ट ए में 5 यूनिट है, जियोमॉर्फोलॉजी, क्लाइमेटोलॉजी, ओशनोग्राफी, बायोजियोग्राफी एंड एनवायरमेंटल जियोग्राफी। अगर आप देखोगे जनरली वैसा ही होता है, एक एक पार्ट से एक एक क्वेश्चन ले लिया जाता है। दिस इज अ कंपल्सरी क्वेश्चन विच एवरीवन नीड्स टू अटेम्प्ट। देन you have second, third and fourth questions. There are 3 more questions, fourth question, and all of them have 3 parts. इसमें से आपको कम से कम एक चूज करना पड़ता है अगर आप 2 बना रहे हो सेक्शन बी से, और अगर आपका फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी बहुत अच्छा है तो यू कैन चूज 2 ऑल्सो आउट ऑफ द रिमेनिंग 3. What am I saying? First question is compulsory, you need to do that. Every question carries 10 mark and one question is each from every chapter of your physical geography or 1 unit of your physical geography. Then you have 2, 3 and 4, 3 more questions. Out of this you have to choose at least 1 and at best you can do 2 because there's total 8 questions in a question paper और आपको 5 करने होते हैं जिसमें फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन और फिफ्थ क्वेश्चन कंपलसरी होता है, तो बाकी बच गए सेकंड, थर्ड, फोर्थ, 6, 7, 8, 6 क्वेश्चन में से आपको 3 और चूज करने होते हैं, आउट ऑफ विच यू हैव टू चूज एट लीस्ट 1 फ्रॉम ईच सेक्शन. तो इसमें से आप सेकंड, थर्ड और फोर्थ में से एट लीस्ट एक तो आपको करना पड़ेगा और एट मैक्सिमम आप 2 कर सकते हो. These questions are again a mixture of geomorphology, climatology, oceanography, environmental geography and biogeography. But कई बार you will find that there is some element of current affairs also involved in it. जैसे कि like if there is a question on cyclone or question on say some hazards or something like that. Clear? तो वहाँ पर आपको थोड़ा करंट अफेयर चाहिए होता है बट इट इज़ वेरी लिमिटेड इन पेपर 1. इन पेपर 2 जो इंडिया वाला पेपर है वहाँ पे करंट अफेयर्स का वैल्यू बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ जाता है. तो जो पहला पार्ट होता है वो पूरा फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी से आता है और जो फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन है वो 5 यूनिट्स में बिल्कुल बराबर बटा हुआ होता है एंड आउट ऑफ द रिमेनिंग कितने क्वेश्चंस रह गए आपके, हर क्वेश्चन के 3 पार्ट हैं तो 9 क्वेश्चंस हो गए. 9 क्वेश्चंस 5 यूनिट्स से, और अगर 9 क्वेश्चंस 5 यूनिट से आएंगे तो आप एक चीज देखोगे दैट जियोमॉर्फोलॉजी, क्लाइमेटोलॉजी एंड एनवायरमेंटल ज्योग्राफी में हो सकता है एक से ज्यादा क्वेश्चन हो. क्यों? बिकॉज दीज 2 फॉर्म द कोर ऑफ द सब्जेक्ट. जैसे अभी हमने जनरल सर्कुलेशन ऑफ द एटमॉस्फेयर देखा जो कि पूछा गया था प्रीवियस क्वेश्चन पेपर्स में. लाइक here you see question number 3rd, first part, which is a 20 marker, which says discuss in detail the tricellular model of atmospheric circulation. Tricellular model is the tricellular meridional model or the general circulation of the atmosphere. तो क्लाइमेटोलॉजी से तो एक क्वेश्चन आपको डायरेक्टली मिल गया 20 मार्क्स का. आप समझ सकते हो कितना इजी था ये समझने के लिए, भी ज़्यादा मुश्किल भी नहीं था. ओनली थिंग इज you just need to learn the concepts and after that everything becomes so easy. Clear? तो रिमेनिंग 9 क्वेश्चंस जो होते हैं लाइक सेकेंड क्वेश्चन, थर्ड क्वेश्चन एंड फोर्थ क्वेश्चन सबके 3 पार्ट हैं तो 9 क्वेश्चन हो गए. इन 9 क्वेश्चन में से 5 क्वेश्चंस तो फिर हर यूनिट से एक एक आ जाता है. लाइक 1 you get from geomorphology, 1 from climatology, 1 from biogeography, 1 from environmental geography and 1 from oceanography. बट उसके बाद भी 4 क्वेश्चंस और बचते हैं, सब पार्ट्स की मैं बात कर रहा हूं. तो वो 4 क्वेश्चंस आप देखोगे जनरली दे आर टेकन फ्रॉम जियोमॉर्फोलॉजी, क्लाइमेटोलॉजी एंड एनवायरमेंटल ज्योग्राफी. Nowadays UPSC is focusing more on environmental geography because of the relevance of environmental conservation today. Clear? तो इससे तो हमें ये समझ में आया कि पेपर 1 जो है ज्योग्राफी में उसमें फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी का क्या सिग्निफिकेंस है. लेट अस हैव अ लुक एट पेपर 2 विच इज द इंडियन ज्योग्राफी सेक्शन. उसमें देखते हैं हम कि फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी का क्या रिलेवेंस है. सो लेट्स हैव अ लुक एट द सेकेंड क्वेश्चन पेपर ऑफ ज्योग्राफी विच इज ज्योग्राफी पेपर 2 और द ज्योग्राफी ऑफ इंडिया. ये क्वेश्चन पेपर जरा अलग है बिकॉज इसमें पिछले क्वेश्चन पेपर में जो पेपर 1 का होता है उसमें पार्ट ए पूरा फिजिकल होता है, पार्ट बी पूरा ह्यूमन होता है, बट यहाँ पर ऐसा नहीं है। यहाँ पर मिक्स्ड होते हैं क्वेश्चन पार्ट ए और पार्ट बी में, मतलब आपको पार्ट ए में भी फिजिकल मिल सकता है, पार्ट बी में भी फिजिकल मिल सकता है। एंड मोस्टली द क्वेश्चंस आर इन द नेचर ऑफ अप्लाइड फॉर्म rather than very straightforward questions. But this paper is, from the scoring point of view, is more rewarding because most of the questions you will see that aspirants are generally familiar with, क्योंकि वो इंडिया से रिलेट करते हैं और हर सबको अपने देश के बारे में सबसे ज़्यादा पता होता है। जो पहला क्वेश्चन होता है that's a map marking question, and I told you कि ये map marking question जो है ये सिर्फ पेपर 2 का ही हिस्सा है। इट इज नॉट फाउंड इन ज्योग्राफी ऑप्शनल पेपर 1। इट मीन्स देयर इज नो वर्ल्ड मैप मार्किंग बट ओनली इंडिया मैप मार्किंग। 10 क्वेश्चन होते हैं उसमें, या 10 चीजें होती हैं जो आपको मैप पे दिखाना होता है। यू गेट अ मैप, आउटलाइन मैप ऑफ इंडिया एज वेल, वेयर यू हैव टू पॉइंट दीज प्लेसेस एंड यू हैव टू राइट फ्यू things about them in not more than 30 words. Things should be geographically relevant. तो अगर आप इनमें देखोगे, जैसे कि रिवर पूछ लिया कोई, और सपोज लो कोई पास पूछ लिया, पीक पूछ लिया, इट मीन्स देयर इज, अगर 10 हैं तो उसमें से 7 या 8 तो फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी से ही होते हैं मैप मार्किंग में। तो यहां पर फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी का एक रेलेवेंस हमें दिख रहा है। एंड इन द रेस्ट ऑफ द क्वेश्चंस you will get a mixture of physical geography and human geography. Like if you see this question, examine the major causes of groundwater depletion in India. Groundwater depletion, it means it is an environmental problem. It relates to the contemporary issues because abhi ho raha hai groundwater depletion, and therefore contemporary issues is the part of physical geography. There are overlapping sections again. Look at this. Why is the Indian monsoon erratic? Monsoon means climatology of India. Again, physical geography. Examine the significance of dry farming in drought prone areas of India. Dry farming मतलब agriculture. Agriculture is a part of your human geography. तो फर्स्ट पार्ट में ही आप देख रहे हो कि कुछ क्वेश्चंस तो फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी से हैं, कुछ क्वेश्चंस ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी से हैं। यहाँ पे भी वैसा ही सीन है that from part A and part B, the first and the 5th questions are compulsory in nature. The 5th questions has subparts 5A, 5B, 5C, 5D, 5E. And similarly, the first question has 4 parts. First one is the map part, and then you have B, C, D. So first question और 5th question ये compulsory होता है। और बचे हुए 6 question में से second, third, fourth, 6th, 7th, 8th, you have to choose 3 more, choosing at least 1 from each section. मतलब 2, 3, 4 में से आपको एक तो करना पड़ेगा, 6, 7, 8 में से आपको एक तो करना पड़ेगा, और एट बेस्ट आप 2 कर सकते हो, मतलब 2 and 3 कर लो, 3 and 4 कर लो, 2 and 4 कर लो, तो 2 कर सकते हो बेस्ट, बट एक तो एट लीस्ट करना पड़ेगा हर सेक्शन से। एंड अगेन इफ यू विल सी दैट यू विल फाइंड दैट देयर इज गुड कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ फिजिकल एंड ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी क्वेश्चंस इन एवरी क्वेश्चन। तो इंडियन ज्योग्राफी में ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि एक पार्ट फिजिकल है, एक पार्ट ह्यूमन है। ऐसा ज्योग्राफी पेपर 1 जो प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ ज्योग्राफी है उसमें तो है, बट अगर आप ओवरऑल ऐड करोगे, जो जैसे कि ये एक फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी का क्वेश्चन हो गया जिसके 10 मार्क्स हैं, ऐसे करके अगर आप सिलेक्ट करके ऐड करते रहोगे, यू विल फाइंड that nearly 50% of the weightage in your India paper also goes to physical geography. Clear? So students, this was a small effort to tell you that why geography is a good optional, how you should prepare for geography, which books you should follow. We also discussed a small topic to get the taste of the subject, and we also saw the examination pattern. But we have focused only on one part of geography, that is physical geography. In the next session, which is a continuation of this session, part 2 of this session, I will try to deal with human geography, and there we will also try to understand one topic of human geography to get the feel of human geography. So that's it for as far as this session was concerned. See you all into the next session. Thank you very much.